May we all rise for the pledge. Please rise for the pledge.
Pledge allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, everybody. Dr. Brendan, would you like to preface our meeting and get
Do we have a
started?
motion to approve the agenda?
I need a motion to.
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda.
I will second.
A motion made by Ms. Marcus and seconded by Mr. Marcus. Yeah.
So good afternoon.
Could you vote?
Wait, we have to call for the motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
I'll just keep going.
Okay, motion carries.
Okay, good afternoon. We are very excited to be where we are today in our strategic plan, and would like to welcome our cabinet and our site level administrators that are joining us this afternoon. We're at a very exciting point. One thing I pointed out in the superintendent's report last week was that we're really data rich as a school district, and we've been collecting a lot of data, and we are really at a point now where it's very exciting that this is embedded into the work that we do every day. The administration is no longer housing this information and keeping it to themselves and or just with the cabinet. This information is being shared with teachers, and most importantly, this is influencing the teacher's instruction. I've had the pleasure, thanks to the principals, to invite me to the data meetings, and it's been great to be able to attend and really see and hear firsthand how our staff care about our kids. It's not just the academic growth that we're looking at, we're also looking at the whole child, and so it's really pleasing as a superintendent to be able to know and see that we're actually individually talking about students and their success and their progress, and in some cases some of their struggles and where they need support. So from our teaching staff to our counseling staff to our site level administration, we're really in a new era when it comes to what data is available and how we're using it. Today we're going to start with Mr. Stewart at Beverly Hills High School. So I'm going to flip past student services. It is open house at the high school this evening, and so I know Mr. Stewart has a ton on his plate that he needs to do, so we're going to go ahead and start with Mr. Stewart. What would be really beneficial for board members is if each principal and then cabinet member could have that time to run through the reports that you have in front of you. You have the scorecard, but you also have the one-page update from each person as well. But it would be helpful if our administration can go through their portion so that it's cohesive and it's all connected before questions are asked. So if you just write down if you have a question, it would help with the continuity of the overall presentation. So, but we're going to go ahead and start with Mr. Stewart. To save time, you can see we're not using the podium. We do want this to be more of a conversation, so I'll be just kind of clicking ahead on the slides, and so we're not going to be standing up and going to the podium, because that wastes some time, and as you know, time is precious. We want you to be able to answer or to ask questions and have a dialogue as we continue. So I'm going to go right ahead to Mr. Stewart.
Thank you, Dr. Breggy, President Starr, members of the Board of Education. Thank you very much for having us here today to be able to share with you our progress so far at the mid-year for our strategic plan. And so the first thing I would like to, so we have this scorecard up here. Everything's in progress, so spoiler alert, we're still working on it. So if you want to kind of take a look at the packet where it has, I think we are the first 3 pages after student services. And I'm going to kind of walk you through the progress that we've made and potentially some areas where we know we still have some work to do. So the first thing, and I know that Ms. Collins-Williams is going to be talking more about this in her piece for student services in terms of attendance, because there's been a really big district-wide push But this high school is very happy to say that we hit the 95% threshold for attendance in the first semester, which was our goal, which was great. Why are we still in progress? Because we have a whole other semester to go, and as Mr. Margo pointed out, we have creatures like seniors that in second semester start to get a little bit more squirrely, so we're gonna try to hold to the best that we can for our attendance for the rest of the year. Some other things that we've done within the attendance goals to aid us there. We have rolled out Smart Pass, sort of our second phase of Smart Pass. That's the software that we're using along with the middle school to try to make sure that our students are in class, and if they're not in class, we know where they are. I would say that we're not at 100% fidelity at this point on the high school campus, but we are increasing daily in its use. One of the key things that had been missing, which is now solved, is a couple. We have improved kiosks now at various places on campus with iPads that are going to allow us to roll out the sort of tardy feature in SmartPass, as well as our guards have now been equipped with new district devices, which will allow them to utilize the software as they're patrolling on campus and ask kids where they're supposed to be and be able to look at the SmartPass data on their phones as they go. So SmartPass is working really well, and I would just like to say that it's been incredibly helpful in gathering data for us in meetings with students that are at risk academically, whether it's in an IEP meeting, whether it's an SST for a student with a 504. It is giving us tremendous amount of data, more than students would like. So when a student says, I don't know, I just don't get it, and we can look at, and not that we're trying to catch students out, but like then we can look at it if we're in an IEP meeting and say, okay, we hear that, but we can see that you've missed 40 hours of instructional time because you've been out of class on smart passes to various places. That's something we're able to work with all their teachers and their parents on to make sure the students stay in class. So that's been very helpful. We've continued to implement the SART plan, which is the school attendance review team. And so in addition to that, that's going really well. We're having sort of weekly check-ins now on students that need to be on our radar for attendance. And we've been, for the first time in several years, we've been rolling out attendance awards, best quarter, best improved, best overall. We're starting to think about some class competitions. So ways of incentivizing good attendance as well, both individually and sort of in the aggregate, whether it's for classes, grade levels, et cetera. And I'm speaking quickly, I apologize, I'm gonna try to get through quickly so that everybody has a chance. School-wide behavior expectations, we are crushing it for the most part. I'm gonna be careful with my praise because every time I feel like I give a compliment, things fall apart. So Mr. Mead jinxed it in our PTSA meeting last week and said everything's going so swimmingly. We've had a few student issues in the last 10 days that we're working through, but generally speaking, student behavior on campus is significantly improved. Our goal was to lower our suspension rate by 3%. Last year in the fall semester, we had 31 suspensions. This year in the fall semester, we had 18, so we actually lowered it by 42%, which we're really excited about. It means we're keeping kids on campus. We're finding alternatives to that sort of more punitive take and still working on reducing it even further, but we've so far done a really good job in reducing suspensions and keeping kids on campus. Our SRO collaboration this year has been amazing. Dave Rudy is our new SRO at the high school, and he's been incredible. I know Officer Maitland had been working really closely with BV, especially in the years past. Both of them are presents on our campus. Officer Rudy is coming to JV and frosh-off basketball games, really integrating himself into our campus, and it's, I think, made a huge difference for our students. So that's been really awesome. Our staff are being trained in increased use of Aries data input, and our admin team across the entire district worked hard this fall to make sure that we cleaned up what we're inputting, like the fields that we can input into Aries, so that the data that we're going to start to get back is significantly increased. So that's been good. Social emotional learning is going along well. First semester, as we transitioned to a new coach, we got off to less of a, we didn't sprint out of the gate because we transitioned to a new coach, like I said, but we actually had a really good staff meeting on last Wednesday where our coach showed the data from our fall survey from the staff, which really showed us the areas that we are doing well and areas that we need improvement on. So some of the targeted things that we're going to be looking at, interestingly, the staff says that probably the biggest area we still need is data-based decision making. So that goes really nicely with the fact that the rest of that meeting was spent talking to them about how they input pre-referrals in Aries. So in order for us to have the data to share with them, they need to partner with us and they're game for that. So the good news is everybody agrees that data is a need, and so we're off and running with that. So that's kind of one of the bigger takeaways from PBIS, but we're excited about our continued rollout for that. We are going to start our soft rollout for our check-in, check-out system, which is for our next tier for a universal rollout next fall for the next school year. So we're working on our check-in, check-out system. And then in addition to the sort of PBIS aspect of social emotional learning, our counselors have taken on a cool new thing this year, which is working with our ELD students and our new to district students, identifying them and making sure that they are feeling acculturated to our school. They've had some luncheons with them, answering questions for them, and so really taking students that for the first time are stepping foot on Beverly Hills High School and making them feel welcome and helping demystify some of the things that are happening on campus. So that's been really good. Community engagement, Bulldogs to Normans articulation process is as we're speaking right now. Last week we visited BVMS, which was amazing. Tonight we're opening our doors for our welcome night, and so between all of the events of last week and tonight, I think we're making really strong effort to make sure that anybody that is planning to come to the high school is educated, is informed, will understand the pathways, will understand the potential electives.
To drill.
Oh, come on, Hawthorne.
Talk about data, we're all well
Nice job, Ms.
informed.
Taylor. Nice timing.
Community engagement.
What's happening?
So we had a couple of Zoom town halls to answer questions for prospective parents and current parents to help with the registration process. We've had very consistent implementation in the newsletter, our social media, Parent Square, all of that. Really our social media and our communications team has really congealed with the help of Ms. Decatrell, with the help of Ms. Starkins, some students especially. So there is a lot of this that is student-led, which we think is really important. Okay, now on to academics, which is why we're all here. So, and I will try to go quickly. So, if you could look at the first page. I went a little out of order. I went to attendance. So taking a step back to academics, which is separated a little bit from the graphs that we'll get to in a second. Our student review process was very successful this fall.
Sorry, what page?
I don't know its number, but at the top it says
This one right here.
there's a young person in a lab coat.
Okay, got it.
Yeah. So the student review process has been really helpful this year. So we met, you can see there, 23 ninth graders, 18 10th graders, 25 11th graders, and 13 12th graders. That's administrators and a counselor meeting with students and parents that were at risk academically. And without going and reading every data statistic there for you, you can look at the following two charts that for all grades, both individually and in the aggregate, as the 5-week turned to the 10-week, turned to the semester, all of the numbers of students earning below a C decreased. Some of that is the natural flow of the semester, but we would like to also think that some of that is the interventions that we put in place, trying to meet with these families, especially those that were most at risk, that were struggling the most, that were identified at the 5-week. In addition to that, that third chart there, and I apologize, I missed a piece, but there's 3 different lines where it says total students, all grades, and then percentage of students with 1 D or F, percentage of students with 1 F, and the percentage of students with D's or F's in 3 or more classes. That is again for starting at the top row. That is for week 5, week 10, and the semester grade. So additionally, both students with 1 D or F and students with 3 or more D's or F's decreased as the semester went on from those that we identified through this process. So it was a very useful process. We are only 1 semester in. And like with most things, change takes time. And so we're really excited to continue this process and hope that sort of that change will happen as this year continues. We're going to continue this process into the years in the future. AP, we've already shared a lot of good news there. We're utilizing AP potential college board reports, which is something that can come out of our PSAT efforts, identifying students that would be successful that are maybe not enrolled currently in an AP test or an AP class, but the PSAT can help us understand what classes they might be successful in So when counselors are meeting with students during the registration process, those students can be potentially encouraged into taking those AP classes next semester. We have that AP contract, as we mentioned. Basically, we're paying for exams and we're expecting students to sit for them. I think we only have 5 or 6 opt-outs. We had very successful AP info sessions for students that wanted to get more information about AP classes next year. We had those during the 7th period 2 weeks ago for the courses that you see listed there. We have 2 new courses coming online next year, AP Seminar 10 and AP Seminar 11 and 12. And then we will also be doing a big AP overview tonight at Welcome Night. So I'm going to have you skip the attendance page again. We're going to go to the NWEA chart, which are 2 pages later. We are actually having our data chats tomorrow. So I believe that the other schools have already had their data chats related to their winter administration of either iReady or NWEA. We're having our data chats tomorrow. But before our teachers are going to be looking at this and really kind of digging deep both for their classes and individual students, we were able to get some data to share with you prior to that. Science is missing, I'll explain that in a second, but if you look there, actually our best growth so far this year has been in math, which I know is an area of emphasis for us as a district, so that's really good news. So if you can kind of look there, we want to know why, looking at the achievement data for math, we kind of want to know why grade 10 held so steady rather than increased, but we have some suppositions for why that may have been. But both grades 11 and 9, as you can see there, had some pretty significant achievement growth from the fall administration to the winter. Language held a little bit more steady across the board. And so we're going to be trying to get more information from our students and staff for how the winter administration went. Because rather than doing it in their classes with their teachers, we did it school-wide in periods 3 and 4. So they may have been taking this test with their PE teachers. We want to know whether that was an effective model or not, and if perhaps that affected our data at all. But our language growth was relatively flat. And so that's something that we're going to be digging into tomorrow. For what it's worth, and this is somewhat anecdotal, we've had a lot of teacher absences since we've gotten back from break for like weeks at a time, for COVID, family leaves, things like that. To what in the English department specifically, so to what extent that has affected this will be interesting to see. We're excited to do the data chats tomorrow. We're excited to get more information at the end of the year. Why is science not there? We will have more science data to share after our science department meets. Not very many high schools in the country use NWEA for 11th grade science. So there's not a lot to compare our data against nationally. So we want to look at our data a little bit more comprehensively before we share it out with you guys to sort of try to make it a little bit more understandable. But we will certainly be sharing science data with everybody in our next update.
And we'll jump on this too, is this will be the last year that we'll actually test 11th grade in science because we are actually testing 10th grade in the CAST. So CAST is English and math, CAST is the science. And in past, we were testing our 12th grade students, and we realized that a lot of our 12th grade students aren't taking science. They're taking their 3 years in 9th, 10th, and 11th. But also we noticed that instead of adding an additional assessment to the 11th grade year, meaning SAT, CASP in English and math, and then APs, we're moving the CAST to 10th grade when that's coming out of most students have taken biology, going into chemistry, or taking another science. It's easier, so then they're focused on a singleton exam. So I appreciate the high school administration for bringing those recommendations to Ed Services and Cabinet. So that way, we won't then have to test 11th grade and in WEA. So it'll be one more assessment we can pull off those 11th graders' plates next year because of the recommendation of moving the CAST. And we've seen other districts that have done that, which has been super successful.
Thank you, Mr. Seaman.
Yeah.
And then the last one that we just was kind of, we thought pretty positive data was our PSAT data.
Positive, huge.
Thank you. I was trying to.
I wanted to see it back for about a year.
Under promise, over deliver.
Yes.
We were very happy with our PSAT data. It kind of walks you through sort of the max total score is 1520, max subject score is 760. We had 10 students scoring above 1420. So what does this mean? We had an unusual dip for us in National Merit Scholarship qualifiers this year. We expect that number to raise significantly next year based on some of the preliminary data, so we're excited about that. Total number of students scoring over 1,300 was 25. This is where it gets kind of amazing. So total number of students that had a perfect score in English was 1. We had 5 kiddos get perfect scores in math.
Never, ever had
That
to
is
see that.
pretty amazing, and so like that number,
Sorry, 5.
kids got perfect
5
scores in the
kids.
math section
math.
of the PSAT, which
And
is
2 missed 1 question.
pretty
I
amazing.
know.
7 in total.
So we're really excited
Never
about
seen
that. That along with our growth data we're seeing in NWEA gives us some positive vibes heading into CAP testing, especially for math. So we're kind of excited to continue that train. And then also, obviously with any of these things, we've identified some of our struggling students that we're going to compare PSAT data with NWEA data. Was it a bad day? Did they blow it off? Or is this systemic for that student? That we can identify for intervention. And then you can kind of see what's nice about this chart down here is it is this cohort of students. So we can see what they did in the fall of 21 and their sort of mean total scores and English reading and writing and math scores raises by the time they took the spring test last year as sophomores in PSAT 10. And then by the time they were this year as juniors in the fall, their scores raised even higher. So we're seeing growth in all of those students in the PSAT. Sorry, that was an enormous amount of information. I talked really fast. Any questions?
Just take us real quick back to the distribution where it's the NWEA data starts with math 6+ fall to winter growth.
Yeah.
Just trying to understand the color scheme there. So you're saying like for grade 11, the 69th percentile, 13% of all 11th graders were at the 69th percentile? Is that what this?
Yeah, I can jump in here if
Okay.
that's okay with you, Drew. It may be more helpful if you look at BVs just for 1 second. So if you flip the page,
Right.
you'll see the actual percentage key was underneath their
Yeah,
chart
I
and
still
not
can't.
on the high school's chart.
Okay.
So you'll see that the exciting part, because we've spent a lot of time on our math instruction, professional development, you'll see like in 11th grade now, looking at the BV chart,
Okay.
underneath achievement, you'll see they went from 80th to 84th. So they've jumped 4 percentile marks up in growth from the original diagnostic into this winter assessment. So that's
But the
where,
color, it's difficult for me to read this, it's so small.
hard,
Yeah, the coloring is the coding red, orange, yellow, the green, and the blue. It
the
doesn't-
goal is to get green and blues. So you want to see the increase in the greens and blues, which you see that, but really it's underneath that. And I understand that it's hard, I apologize, that the 11th grade went from 80th to 84th. Mr. Student mentioned geometry, we stayed steady, it was 70, I think it's 4 to 3. 9th went from 65 to 71. So you'll see the growth over, and again, it's a growth score. So maintaining means they're still growing. It's just we haven't seen them grow past what's expected of them as learners in that grade band.
So these are growth scores, they're not scores like, so again, like, just going back to grade 11, 54th, that 54 number means that that's their growth score? Like
So
they
the
were-
54% for grade 11 under math
Yeah.
is the students that were above 80%
Got
in achievement. So the growth bar is the one on top of that. That one's a little more difficult to understand, and we'll probably get you a little bit clearer one so we can follow up with you so you can see this a little bit more clearly. But also we'll have a lot more to share after we do our data chats tomorrow. But like the easiest one to understand is if you look at the achievement, 54% in this particular implementation of the exam.
Okay.
scored in that blue, whereas in the fall, 48% scored in the blue. So we saw a raise of about 6% of students achieving in that highest
In the
band.
80th percentile?
Right.
Okay, thank you.
And this, then you can just kind of see the distributions between those two.
Did they mostly move from the, like, where did they move from into that 54%?
It's a good question. So if you look at it, in the case of math, grade 11, it looks like probably a good number of them moved from the green, and we haven't disaggregated this by student yet. But if you'll notice that, like, the students performing in green in the fall was at 26%, and that lowered significantly to 13%. So probably a good number of them moved from that 26% in the green into the blue. But we also lost some students as well. Like, we probably had some students that were previously in the green that went down because our yellow and orange did grow as well. So overall, our students were more successful, but some students did show regression. And so that's what we're gonna find out tomorrow. We're gonna sit with our math department, we're gonna sit with our English department, our science department, and we're gonna look at class by class, kid by kid, who these students were and whether they moved up, whether they moved down, and start to try to figure out why that was, if there's commonality.
The one thing I'll
Sort
say,
of the-
one thing I'll say about that, and I was able to, when I was at Horseman, and Mr. Bugby and I spent time with the 5th grade, grade level teachers, like, that's exactly what they did. So, like, it was important to see just, who, if there was regression, but also if there were some students, they were concerned with, okay, there was somebody that didn't grow at all. Like, they actually performed the same. And so that was a concern among teachers as well. So you're right, that's kind of that next step. But that's the beauty of having the conversation too, is looking one by one to see who's exceeding, and then the other conversations, well, why do you think that student, why was there so much growth with that one student? That's the level of conversation that they have.
Do you have some sort of a benchmark of what the kind of distribution and that growth and achievement looks like as sort of a benchmark, even though I know our school is different than all others, but do you expect to see a certain percentage of staying the same, a certain percent with regression, a certain percent moving, like, how does this compare to what benchmark would you use other than where you started?
Right. So the next, you want to say something? Go ahead.
Yeah, so this is nationally normed assessment, so this is we're already ranking against our not competitors.
Against
The world, yeah.
Yes.
Anybody that's using this tool in the country.
Yeah, so again, going back to placing 80th percentile or higher, the ultimate goal every year and our expectations, I think what we would say to BV and to BHHS is always that obviously the red is a area that we have tier 3 interventions around. So, like, when you're looking at, and what we always have to be clear, I think sometimes we don't say this out loud, is that we know that there is at minimum maybe say 10 to 15% of our each grade band that receive services that are tier 3 in nature because they aren't able to maybe comprehend when they read, or they aren't able to compute when they we're screening now more for dyslexia. So some of our students, not that we're not monitoring growth, because we are to the community, but we know that they are years behind sometimes where they currently need to be, and predominantly talking about some of maybe our special education students, some of our students that are receiving 504 services.
Can I interject?
Yeah.
And the measure for those students, remember, is also their individual goals that are on their IEPs. So that's the measure of growth and expectations that we have for the students. Not that we don't want them to aim
Their
at grade
growth
level,
looks different.
but that's how we're measuring it annually.
Yeah. My brother who had Down syndrome had totally different academic goals than say I did when I was in school, yet he made progress each and every year and grew each and every year through his IEP process. And they utilize we all do, but Student Services also utilizes this data to help monitor those growths in the IEPs. So what I'm saying, the reason I say that is when we look at red, that's, again, going back to, that's not necessarily the population that we are tackling here, because what Drew's trying to do is infiltrate throughout all of the English departments and all of the math departments. You're really looking at trying to move those gold, the gold or yellow into the green, and even pushing those all into blues, and then getting to the heart of why those oranges sit there. Is it because they need additional supports we haven't identified yet? Could they possibly be borderline special education students that need additional support or different goals? So when you're looking at this, what I do is I sit there and I look at the gold and the green, and I'm like, okay, let's 10 more of these, get them over, you know, cherry pick them, right? And that's how we're gonna get the data to shift.
And then I think also the overall percentage is what we're looking at, it's like
Yeah.
80% or higher is mastery, it's an overall.
Yeah, yeah.
I have one thing, and that is, and this was of course what I just heard from Dr. Briggy about what went on at Horace Mann with the 5th grade. And of course, I practically, probably, I don't know how possible this is, but you go through the scores for each student, so you can really evaluate each student and what they've done. And now we're looking at the high school and the possibility of doing something like that. And it's almost astronomical to try to do that. And so I'm just being realistic about, because it's smaller and there's teachers and there's the numbers and so on are different, that my question is, bottom line, right now, if you were to evaluate all this assessment that we've been doing, how will it relate and show up in the assessments that the kids will take in May or April, showing the progress so that the scores NASH for us will look better? Do you see that as being something that's really gonna happen? In other words, these are wonderful, these assessments, but I'm thinking that we wanna make sure that one of our goals is to improve ourselves in the national rankings. How this will relate to that, how close are these aligned to the improvement of those scores showing in the.
Such a good
Can I-
question.
Can I answer it from just a whole?
Answer that question?
Oh yeah, go ahead. I'll shut up.
So
It's not my section.
it is,
But I,
No, it's a tough
I-
question, I'm a teacher.
That's the bottom line.
It's a great
So
question.
I think
Bottom
it's a
line
great
to me
question.
is, we're doing all this wonderful work, and we're trying to really improve our kids' assessments in school and doing better. Is this gonna show up?
it's a great question. So for me, the biggest exciting thing, especially about the math, is that the students that are testing this spring are grade 11, and they are showing the most achievement in our math, particularly in math. So if those kids go into the CASP and they do as well in the CASP as they did on this winter administration of NWEA, then I have high hopes. There are lots of variables though. To your point about it's much more challenging to do this individualized work with students at the high school, 1,000%. Like, no
Well,
question
maybe
about it.
the ones at the lower level, maybe you.
Right. And so the lift for the teachers is to look at the data for their 100 and however many kids and try to both find bang for their buck and how they can help individual kids, and the most important thing is to talk with that student, share this data with that student, and help the student understand their own goals and the areas where they need to grow. But also how they can look at it and find the best way that they can change and alter instruction in class for the most students, where they'll get, again, that sort of that bang for their buck.
So the NWEA testing is a good indicator of the spring testing that's gonna be happening with the national.
Well, we hope it will.
It's certainly better than anything we've had.
Okay.
Any internal data, anything that we've had. Is it gonna be perfect? We'll find out this year. Like, this is our first time doing it. I think it's gonna be a significantly better indicator of what we're gonna get into. And this is just me being completely transparent, my only fear is that, not my only fear, a potential stumbling block could be test fatigue.
Test what?
Test fatigue. So our students now have taken sort of like a school-wide administration of this in 3 different subjects in the fall. Again, in the winter, we tried to make it quicker for them in the winter by the way in which we administered it. I am curious to know how much that affected scores in particular areas. And so it'll be interesting to see how our test scores come back in the spring. I think the other piece is our continued efforts as a school side, as a district, of encouraging families to understand how important this
Yeah.
testing is
And I
for
have been-
them.
Sorry to interrupt,
Yeah.
I've been speaking to Dustin a little bit and to Michael about, you know, some of the-
Probably more difficult at the high school level than it is in the elementary, or middle school.
Motivating high schoolers to take these seriously is certainly.
Right, but we also want the partnership with the parents to
Yes.
understand why we care, and that's why I did my little amateur
That-
thing, because we need to.
That's a
They need to know.
huge ingredient, for sure. Like, I met with our sloths on Friday. Why do I call them sloths? The test has an icon that shows up if the kids, it's a little bit ironic, but telling them to slow down. It means that they're clicking too,
Oh, good, I didn't know.
they're clicking to the test too quickly, and they're not able to, it's telling us that there's no
They don't
chance that they're
care.
actually trying or reading
Mhm.
the thing. So we threw them in the media center on Friday, and I did my best attempt at both tough love and like, go get 'em guys, in anticipation of what's coming up in the spring. It's the kid that used to bubble C all the way down on the Scantron, right? And so it's a matter of our teachers motivating those students in the classroom, hoping that some of this process and helping students actually understand where they are in their learning, and for the kids that are really struggling, trying, as Dustin and Laura were saying, really try to help them understand why are there more supports we can put in place for them, because sometimes they just feel overwhelmed and they don't know how to do it. Sometimes they just don't care, and their parents don't care.
That is huge. I'm telling
and
you,
that-
it's huge. The parents tell me they don't care. I can't tell you how many tell me.
And so you guys often ask us
I opt out.
how the board can
Can I-
help. I don't have the answer, but any way in which the board can help us with that
Yes.
parent piece,
Which is a good idea.
Some
we
kind
would,
of a,
we would be very accepting of any help we can get
Even
there.
ones whose kids are really, they're like, Manny, I want so-and-so to opt out. I said, no, I know how that person is gonna test, please don't.
can I go back one second?
Can I just answer your question as well? Because I think what's important is, you know, yes, it's important for students to know about individual growth and for parents to know about individual growth. But what's happening is also that the teachers are able to use that information. So like even at a 5th grade level, and this happens at every school, is like teachers were starting to talk about, here's where they could see, here's where we're having difficulty. And so I sat in meetings where teachers were talking about, it was multiplying and dividing fractions. And so then they were talking about, okay, what else can we do? Because that is an area where kids are struggling at the 5th grade level. This is the beauty behind, you know, it's, yes, everyone has responsibility here. The students have a responsibility, but also the teacher part, like what's going to change their instruction, because they know that kids are struggling. And I was able to hear it, this conversation, and it was a robust conversation. What are you doing? I'm using this. There's another resource that I'm going to use, because they could see that this is where we're not seeing the growth area in multiplying and dividing fractions.
May I
Mhm.
tag on to that? Super important to point out, 6 years ago when I got here, teachers were not ready to have discussions about your scores and your scores compared to my scores. In this data chat, it's fascinating to say, hey,
Yeah.
that teacher's scores are
They did.
higher than ours.
Yeah.
What gives?
What are you doing?
They did, yeah,
And I'll say it, Michelle Stratford shared what she's doing.
yeah.
Yeah.
And they're taking it on.
Can I go back and ask another, you mentioned you're adding 2 new classes, AP seminar in grade 10 and another one in 11 and 12. What exactly is involved in AP seminar?
It's more of a research-based class. Ms. Cabellis is here. She would be welcome to chime in too if she wants, if I misspeak. But it's, so for 10th grade, it can actually be their English class. It can count as their graduation requirement for their English class. For 11 and 12, it would be a complementary elective English class. They would still have to take either a regular English 11, 12 class or AP Lit or Lang, but they can take AP Seminar in addition to it. And it's
It will help them with the AP exam, is that the
it
idea?
is its own AP class. So it's its own AP class called AP Seminar, with a heavy focus and emphasis on research skills.
I want to make sure that Mr. Drew can continue and to come, because we have like 3 other schools, so do you want to continue or?
I
anyone
have
else?
just a
He's
couple
done.
quick questions.
I am done with my presentation. I'm just
sorry.
answering questions.
Yeah, okay, go ahead.
First, I wanted to know, when you pull the families in for the Ds and Fs, and thank you so much for the presentation. When you pull them in, what's happening to the family response? Because I feel like that really speaks to, you know, the tying in with the community. So, you know, the kids are not doing well, and the student is being pulled into whose office?
So typically they're getting pulled into one of these the assistant principal or my office.
Okay.
We're joined by a counselor, and we're joined by the student and one or two of their parents
Okay.
typically.
Are you seeing a consistent response by the families, or is there a common denominator that you can share with us? You know, or does it lead you to a conclusion of something else that we as a board can help you address? Or, you know, what information are those meetings giving to you, because it's time consuming?
It is time consuming, and those are all very good questions. I would say the first, almost universal response is gratitude for us caring. Like one of the families that we met with was a family that had started senior year from private school, and they couldn't believe that the principal was taking time, because I happen to have seniors, that I was taking time to just meet with them about their student that was struggling in a couple classes at the 10-week mark. So they were very grateful. Some are grateful in different reasons. Some are grateful because they want us to help motivate their kid because it's not working at home.
Yeah.
Some are grateful just for the fact that we're paying attention. The common theme, however, that we're seeing, I'll just say it this way from a 12th grade perspective, I won't speak for my whole team, but I'll bring this question back to them and you can think about it, is that really the gratitude is often rooted in the fact that the parents are not quite sure what to do.
Yeah.
Especially as the kids are getting older by the time they're juniors and seniors. And so while we have seen some growth, there are also some families for whom this process wasn't the magic bullet, so to speak.
But now how about the younger families, like, as you're capturing them, you can influence your 14-year-old a lot more than you can influence your 17 or 18-year-old.
Yeah.
So what's happening at the 14 and 15 age group level where, parents are still somewhat involved? By senior year, it might be like, the writing's on the wall either way.
Yeah.
But are the families, what's the next step there? How are they,
It felt, first of all, one of the big benefits is that it opens a partnership, right? So it opens lines of communication with us and with those families, and they feel much more willing to reach out to us because they see us as allies versus adversaries. So if we're calling them in and we're saying, like, hey, your student's really struggling with attendance and their grades are suffering as a result, what can we do to figure this out?
Yeah.
They're much more likely, especially in 9th and 10th grade, to be a part of that process with us. And it helps to now have that connection with the assistant principal or the counselor that they met in person. So I think it pays dividends, and this is kind of what I said earlier, this is a major change management piece in how we're operating as a school. So I'm excited to continue it and see over time how it works. Like, because anytime there's a new initiative, sometimes kids and parents will be like, we just have to grin and bear it this time. They're gonna lose steam on this. They're gonna stop calling us. But we're having our data chats coming up, or our grade level chats coming up again in a couple of weeks after the 5-week grades come out. And we're not stopping. We're gonna continue next year. It's a priority and it's important, and I think once it feels systemic, that this is something that we're gonna do and we're not gonna relent on, I am hopeful that longitudinally that will help for those people that are originally maybe resistant or just hoping that will go away.
For the spring, is it gonna be, again, NWEA testing, or the spring testing will be the actual standardized testing?
We are gonna have our standardized testing. Ms. Cabell, can you?
Does that, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, we will, we just finished our second NWEA window. So when we come back from spring break, we'll do CAS. Then we'll move into NWEA for the 9th and 10th graders. Then shortly after that, we move into AP exams, which are a little bit later this year than usual, about 6 days later. And then we'll move into finals for seniors and finals for 9th through 11th. So it really has to be carefully timed out
That's
and
the fatigue.
planned.
Plus California, so there's a lot.
Yeah.
And then the other thing, the reason why we're not doing the end of the year with 11th grade is because we are having the CAS.
Yeah.
They take an 11th grade, that's gonna be
That's
their
it,
final
yeah.
assessment.
Yeah, I will say, about the English, I have heard a lot of English teachers out across the board, because I have a lot of kids coming and going in my car at the high school level. I just listen. And I have also heard that also means that the work is not being graded, and so it's very hard for the students to calibrate and understand where they are. And so I would just ask, if this has become a chronic problem, a faster solution would be better, please.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
for that. Any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Yay, Beverly Vista Middle School, thank you guys. Okay, so all of our goals are in progress. If I could, I would put like a check plus, or if I could like have another column like more progress made, I would put it there, but we're in progress. For our academics, I love numbers and data, so I've got quite a few numbers there for you to see. We have currently 120 students enrolled in a version of an intervention or support class. Those are our Gen Ed students. That does not count our special ed students that are in special ed support classes, which is amazing because we have so many electives for students to choose from. So convincing parents and students that know this intervention class is really important is a task for our counselors, but I'm very pleased with the number of 120 students. We have,
Did you say that there's no special ed in that number?
correct, that's a separate number.
What's the universe of those general ed students? Like what percentage of those of the general ed students is this 120 represent?
We're at like 7, I can't do the math in my head, 20% of our students, give or take. We have a lot of areas for support for our students. We have the intervention classes, that takes away their elective. We have some students who we have not put into intervention classes, but we have other layers or tiers of support to really tackle the academics. And so we have after school support. We had 716 sign-ins for our after school tutoring. We offer it Monday through Thursday from 3:15 to 4:15. It's free. I think last year we did a board spotlight where we brought the high school tutors. So we have teachers and the high school students coming to tutor our students. We have a lunchtime support that meets Monday through Thursday. And this year last year we really kind of forced some kids into it. And this year we have a few that we forced into the lunch support, but we just made it more available and we advertise it every day on the announcements, the lunch support. And I was very surprised when I looked at the numbers that we had 300 sign-ins for lunch support, and that is students going on their own to get help at lunch. And we can see the numbers of like who's logging in, and it's very clear there's a handful of students like that's just where they found their home, and that's where they're going every day at lunch. So very happy with those numbers. We have 470 students that we have provided an ALEX license to. That's one of our math interventions. What it is, it's in addition to their classes, it's not during class time, it's just given to them. They can do it at home, they can do it during advisory, they can do it during downtime in class. And I have a teacher that monitors student progress on it. We give prizes for students that meet the participation goal. It's not something that we can mandate or require. We try really hard. So right now, our numbers are not as high as I would like in terms of the active participants for it. We have 140 students that are regularly active using their ALEX licenses, but we're providing it. And when we have those conversations with parents, like, we've given your child a login for this, we're monitoring, we're calling them in, we're calling you, and sometimes I get the emails, please stop bothering me, like my child is just not going to do ALEX. Okay.
Noted.
Yes.
I got Alex at home.
Yes. We are continuing with our CER assessments, so English and math went first semester, science is coming up in the next couple of weeks, and then we've done the 2 rounds of NWA testing. So if you go to the next couple of pages, we have our math, science, and reading scores, and I could pretty much say ditto to everything that Mr. Stewart said for the testing. We're very excited by the math scores. We see growth there. And my math teachers were also really excited about that too. They've been working really, really hard at ensuring growth. And I think one of the big things with the NWA assessment is that it really is individually looking at students and are they growing? And if they're not growing, then why are they not growing? And sort of to answer your question, Mrs. Marcus, that you asked of Mr. Stewart, like what do we do with this data? It's not just this graph. I've been very blessed with Mr. Seaman and Mr. Guzman providing us the funding and the support to have release days for our teachers to spend the time to analyze this data. And what I've asked my teachers to do during the first round of testing in the fall was I asked them to identify 3 to 5 students that they wanted to target. Based on their NWEA scores, between now and the next assessment, what are you going to do to target those students? And then after the winter assessment, when we had our data review days, I said, okay, let's take a look at those 3 to 5 students that you identified. How did they do? In addition to that, what I asked my teachers to do was to list every single student. So I created a Google Doc for them where they had to turn it in at the end of the day. I asked them to list every single student that did not make any growth, so that they were aware of who are the kids sitting in their class, and that we are aware as an admin team, counseling team, who didn't make growth in these subject areas. And so I think that was really eye-opening for the teachers. I know in the math conversation, 2 of my 8th grade teachers were kind of talking, and one was like, my kids did not make growth, and your kids made way more growth than mine did. And so it was kind of like what Mr. Bugby said. They are now having these conversations about, well, what did you do in your class because your scores are better than mine. Yes.
I was just gonna say, I mean, one thing to think about in terms of growth is there's some kids who are already not in the critical area or the high area, so they're gonna tend to plateau. So a middle of the road type of kid is not gonna show as much growth as someone who is like below the average. There's gonna be a more, direct line either this way or that way, because if you've already reached a certain, like you're at average, the growth is usually not gonna be extreme because they're already kind of, in the middle, I think.
So my understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, Dustin, with the NWEA testing is even if you initially score in the high achievement, it still measures growth for them, and so there is an expectation.
There is an
Because it's not the same test again.
It's adaptive.
Yeah.
So if the student is already here in that high achievement quadrant,
There's still room
the
for them to-
expectation is that they're still linearly growing forward.
So when you're talking about growth, that's to be clear, growth is how much they've improved or how they've shown actually grow from here to grow in inches, so to speak.
Correct.
Whereas achievement is the actual scores that they get.
No, so I hear,
This is another really good question.
yeah. It's, so it's like percent of growth and then their overall score. So in the NWEA, you have their growth, and that's the percentage of like the difference between their diagnostic to their actual assessment.
You mean from the first score to the second score? From
Correct.
the first time
You
to
have
the
that
second
one,
time?
basically that 1 inch. And then that second diagram is basically where they're at compared to the national norm. So where did they achieve at? So really what we're looking at is 1 year's growth in 1 year's time. Are our smart kids, and I asked it in the iReady when we get there, right, Craig? We had a really great conversation around that as well as like what we're also seeing through this process. It's one of those things where once you see the wizard behind the like in Wizard of Oz, like you start to find other issues. So it's not just about can we get those BC kids to move, but it's also like, what are we doing for our high kids?
Yeah.
Because what we're seeing is there is a small population that may have come in and scored really high on the diagnostic, and then just stayed really high. And so what the questions we are having as an administration is, so then what are we doing?
Yeah, for them.
Yes, so it's not just about whether or not we move from 63% as proficient to 64, it's like, what's still happening with the 63? We can't forget about them just because now we're focusing on those other ones to get to 65. And that's what we gotta balance our resources, our time and efforts on. But through doing this long-winded way, but we had a really great conversation. Maggie, me, Craig, and Christine had one, and then me, Kelly, Drew. Like now we also see these other kids that are scoring through the roof. How do we make sure that they don't come back and mom or dad or somebody says, my kid's bored, and I'm like, well, you're actually right.
Yeah.
Your kid is actually bored because we haven't identified growth. We get, you know what I mean? So it's a different level of conversation, but it's, that too is being had. So that's why I want to be clear to the community. It's not just about whether or not we're moving that yellow to green. It's also just, what are we doing about those blues and making sure they maintain and that they're engaged, and what can we do to make it more for them?
And I think the conversation around growth as opposed to like a one-time test, here's the level that you achieved on that one-time test, for our teachers focusing on that growth will accomplish achievement on that one-time test.
Yeah.
And it focuses the conversation back to instruction. Because if we're talking about growth and we're talking about your kids didn't grow, but you did give lessons and you did give instruction, so then they have to be self-reflective of, well, why didn't they grow? And if we're talking about growth, then it's naturally going to follow that they're going to improve on their achievement on the test. And so it's shifting the conversations for teachers and making it more about instruction and less about, well, the student just didn't achieve.
Yeah, that seems to be the difference between last year and this year, is that this is trickling into the classroom.
Yes, yep. Okay, so that was academics. For attendance, my first little bullet, I just want to say ditto to everything that Mr. Stewart said for SmartPass. So we are also using SmartPass at Beverly Vista Middle School. And again, it is helping us to identify the amount of time that students are out of class. We have also seen a significant decrease in students in the hallway and students trying to avoid being in class because they know that the data is being recorded. We, as part of our MTSS team a couple weeks ago, we looked at our high flyers for each grade level. We shared that information with our staff so they know who the high flyers are. They can have conversations like, Sarah, why are you out of class so much? You never leave my class, but I saw you're the fifth offender for that. So we're having really great conversations with it, and we're utilizing that for some of our interventions. So that's how we're able to get such great data about how many students are going to the lunchtime support, who's going to the after-school support, because we're utilizing SmartPass for those as well. We have definitely increased, like Mr. Stewart said, our attendance process. We're sending more letters out. I have gotten numerous phone calls because the letters have my signature on it. They're calling me, I got this letter. They're like scared, like what does this letter mean? And so we're able to have some really good conversations with parents about how important it is to be at school. So that's helped. We have tried to incentivize our students with attendance and with tardies as well. So we, our cafeteria, we got new furniture in it. It's really cool. But we held it closed for the first week that we came back, and we used it as an incentive for tardies. And so the grade level with the least amount of tardies had first access, sole access that day. And of course it was the sixth graders, but they were so excited that they got to be in there first. And so really trying to, and we have in a couple weeks attendance rewards, so the grade level with the best attendance gets an extra long lunch. So really trying to motivate the students with attendance as well. Our behavior expectations. This year it feels like a totally different campus at BVMS. I believe that the work, I know Drew just said, don't jinx us, knock on wood, it's the same thing. Like he and I had a conversation a couple weeks ago about how like the kid like was so good, and then like oh stuff happened. So we have to be very careful in what we say. But I could brag on them all day. Like they're just so great this year. I think the structures that we have put in place, like our monthly admin chats, we are continuing to do that. Today, as an admin team, we sat down and we said, okay, next Monday, we're going in, we're doing our admin chats. What are the topics that we need to talk about? My team sends out the summaries to the parents of what we talk about. Our alternative to suspension program, thank you, Ms. Collins-Williams, for helping to support that program. It's been really beneficial. We have, of the students that have been in that program, only 2 that were repeat offenders, just great.
Is this the in-house with the SRO?
It's
Yes,
that's what I'm thinking.
alternative to suspension, which is different than in-house.
Oh, okay.
Because in the alternative to suspension, they get some counseling support, they get follow-up check-ins, they get some social emotional lessons, so it's different than just sitting in a room with in-house suspension. And our teacher for that program is part of our MTSS team, so when we meet and we're talking, MTSS, our multi-tiered system of support, when we meet and talk about students, she's able to kind of partner with us and meet with students before they make it to her. So we're able to say, hey, we've got these 5 kiddos, we really need you to check in with them, develop a relationship with them. She's great about doing that.
Which is, who is that?
Michelle Y. She's amazing, like we have, like she's so special.
Great.
So that program's been really beneficial. The response from parents has been very positive. When we've had students that have had situations where they are getting an alternative to suspension, the parents are actually very grateful for it, and the conversation about the discipline is very different than before, because we're coming to them with a solution of how do we correct behavior, as opposed to like, just go home and like, you parents deal with it. It definitely is increasing that partnership that we have with parents and how to support the students. Our wellness month is off and running. This week is our physical wellness or dodgeball tournament at school. We had 170 students sign up for it, so it's been a very busy month at BDMS. Our furniture in the student center, our cafeteria, we have set very clear expectations. We're utilizing that as an incentive for student behavior. The students will have to earn some time to go in there. We've also started, and thank you, Mr. Mead, for helping us with this, and this could go in the attendance as well as the behavior expectations. We're mirroring what the high school's doing with the ID cards in the morning, so we kind of soft rolled that out at the beginning of January, and then this week was the first week where it's like, you have to have the ID cards to come onto campus. And that really just sets the tone for the day for students, that like, this is serious, like you're entering in, like you gotta show your badge, like the kids like walk in differently. So that's setting the expectations there. Our social emotional learning, we've had 3 school-wide counseling lessons where our counselors go into the classrooms. We divide which departments they go into. We have had, I know I was at the math conference, so I wasn't able to see Ms. Hartley's presentation, but I did watch it online. And I texted Dr. Brady afterwards, my face hurt. I was smiling so much, I was so proud. But we've had, like she said, over 700 visits since the new building has opened, which is amazing. She does our Wellness Wednesdays. We just had NAMI come and they did our parent university, but they also came to our 7th grade health classes and did presentations with the students there as well. And then community engagement, we continue to do our parent universities. I think one area that I could use support in is just when you're talking to parents, encourage them to come. We offer such great things for them to learn and to really help support their children. We're just not getting the attendance at these parent universities that we would like. And I don't know, we're offering it on Zoom, we are adjusting the times, like, we're not quite sure why they're not showing up. But, so if you guys could encourage, that would be.
Because it's on Zoom.
No,
Well, sometimes we're not even
But-
getting it on
but
Zoom.
I don't want to interrupt your
Yeah.
present, I haven't thought about that. so.
Okay, but I'm almost done. Then I've been very active in trying to recruit parents to come onto campus. So one example was recently with the Butterfly Project. I specifically called parents that I knew would be supportive of that and said, can you come and help me with this? I've had parents come and do ball cart duty or help in the front office with filing or answering phone calls. So just trying to get them back on campus post-COVID. It's been really nice. With our upcoming staff development day with PLC, our community also includes our staff. And one of the things with the PLCs, there's a pre-survey that you can give the staff, and so I did give that to my staff. And it has identified some areas of growth for engagement, and so we're working on it. My staff is very excited for the upcoming PD day. And then lastly, My PTA is doing the first ever community dodgeball tournament, so I hope that there will be a district team participating.
Oh, it's a tournament like?
A full-on tournament, yes. So we're hoping, to get the fire department to have a team, the city to have a team.
Well, I'm not gonna play against the fire department.
Yeah.
No.
I've seen those guys.
I'm gonna be
What's
honest.
the
You may have
date?
to
I
call
think
the fire
I-
department.
yeah. What's the date on that again? I remember putting it in my calendar.
It is Wednesday, the 21st.
We have at least one team, so.
Okay, correct.
yes,
Yeah.
but if any board members, you wanna
I
join
pass.
us?
February 21st?
February 21st. So we have 3 divisions. We have a 5th through 8th grade division.
Over 40?
Well, it's a 9th through 10th grade division, and then 11th and up division. So we'll be with the 11th graders and
Waivers for
So,
each side.
or we can create like a parent,
a parent
Team.
Yes, please.
I'll bring one of those.
Yes, please. There is also a costume contest as well, so the teams with the best costumes can get a prize.
Really cool.
Yes, very, very excited. This again, trying to get the community connected and really kind of let the community know that like middle schoolers are not these scary people. Like we are a fun group of people, and like they're great.
And what time is that?
So the adult division will start like around 5-ish, but it's gonna start at 3:30 for the younger
What
division.
was the date of that again?
The 21st. And I'm gonna give a shout out to Mr. Ellis because he is helping us with this, and we've got food trucks coming, he's helping with security and setup, so it is not just me, he is like doing a heavy lift on this one.
Thank you.
If you didn't get it in the newsletters, I'll send you a separate dodgeball or staff.
Yeah, I think you put it on there because I remember making.
Yeah, I think I put it in.
So sorry. It's the only time that JPA did not have the gyms.
I'll be the spectator.
Sorry, we're not doing this.
I have just a comment about the parent university situation.
Yes,
And I
yes.
did go.
You did, you were at the social dilemma one, yes, I heard.
And I was very disappointed because I and only 2 other parents showed up. And the point of the parent university is the interaction between the parents and discussions and so on. And when you're on Zoom, you don't get that. And it was very disappointing to me that that's a missing part of that whole thing. And there must be a way that we can do it and get more parents to come, because that I was turned off by the fact that there was 2 parents.
It's hard to get motivated when you're one of 2 people.
Yeah, I came because I was expecting a lot of discussion,
Yeah.
and I got none.
We had a whole discussion guide, follow-up questions, conversations that we wanted to have after showing it.
I will say things are oddly busy and normal,
Don't jinx us.
I mean in terms of the commitments that families have between it's because we're doing so much.
Yeah.
And so therefore, parents are, they're not necessarily carving the time out for sharpening the saw for themselves, And
I would like to also make one more comment that I feel, I don't know if it's true, I feel that the atmosphere of bullying, that it was incidental, very strong as you know, at BD last year. I don't hear as much of that right now. I have a feeling that it's calmed down, maybe it's because COVID and all that's over or whatever, and we're starting to address it and so on. So I feel that was a big thing that I had in my mind about a problem at BD. And I'd like to say that from what I can tell, it has improved drastically.
agreed,
Did you want to share some thoughts?
I had a question on the NWA stuff.
Yes.
So I'm looking at the science and English, and obviously there was some consistent decrease in achievement. And I'm wondering, I don't think it's a mystery, but are you looking into reading comprehension and the kids coming out of elementary school, getting a kind of bead on what those reading comp skills are? Because that would really be, it's not a coincidence that those 2 are, I think it's all related to that. It would have to be related to reading comprehension. There's a lot of that in science questions, as well as mathematics, but a lot of reading comprehension. So in your data chats and stuff, did any of that come up?
So the feedback from the teachers in general and also from some of the students was the test fatigue. And the reading and the English test is really long, and it was a lot, and it's a lot it's our first year. And so I had my teachers take a separate Google Doc and put all the notes with all their feedback, all their questions, everything, so that then Drew and I and Dustin could talk about it and say, like, okay, how do we improve it and make it better for students and teachers next year? So I think that was a huge factor in these scores, because they did okay in the fall. And then in the winter, it was finals as well as this testing. And then for science, this was sort of the first kind of go at it for science teachers. Math and English teachers, they're like veterans at this kind of testing. The science teachers, not as much. And so I think that was they're having conversations like why, what happened, was it the test questions? Part of the NWA, we don't get to see what the test questions are, and so.
The problem with saying test fatigue is that it's only gonna get worse. So then you're saying, your score is gonna get worse, because as the springtime comes around, we're just gonna have more test fatigue. But I'll put that on the back burner for a second. Have you thought about, because if the high school is doing their 11th grade as CASP instead of NWE, are you guys thinking about in your winter replacing finals with this? Is there a way to overlap them so you can reduce the amount of tests given at that time?
So that's all, like, when I ask my teachers to give me all their feedback, that's all their ideas, everything is on the table, and it's for, like, Ed Services for us to have a conversation, also with our leadership team, for sure.
But one of the things that Kelly, I don't mean to jump in.
Oh, I didn't want to wind up the Energizer Bunny. I'm
I
sorry.
know, sorry.
I'm so
You know,
sorry,
this is the hardest part for me to sit in this corner.
That was
I'll
on
be
me.
over here for a reason. But I appreciate Kelly and her team for.
Before you go, just real quickly, I think we could have done a better job at mapping out when the testing was, as it relates to finals and everything else that students were doing. And that was just, it's our first time doing it, and we just didn't know. And so so it's on my list to bring to the principals meeting this week.
Pre-Thanksgiving.
What is it gonna look like this spring?
Because something I don't know is what did the 6th grade math look like as opposed to the 6th grade math final? And is there a crossover? And is there a way to reduce the amount of testing if one is picking up the other subject matter?
For sure. Great question.
Yeah, that's a great suggestion.
But in addition, her English department did identify this and is working on doing the interim assessment blocks, which is an additional kind of test prep for the CASP in the English portion. So it's a layer of intervention that, based off these conversations, that they just reached out and is working with the Ed Services team on getting the kids ready for that. The interim assessment block is like another layer of a practice CASP exam, and that they're going to work with their English department on implementing it in partnership with their social studies department.
That's what I was just going to say, to kind of spread it out a little bit, was the English department asked the history department if they would give the interim assessment block so that it's not another test in their English class.
Got it. Okay, thank you. I am.
How does the, because last year we spoke so much about the CERs, and what the impact we were hoping to see of that on the, the growth and performance in this year. How is that showing itself in this now? Because we're not really talking about it. And what are your thoughts about it in relation to these results we're seeing?
If you were to ask a student about it, I think they would tell you that they feel more prepared going into these tests, which just that alone, the confidence that they have going into it, will help with their scores. If you ask the teachers, it's made them look at their instruction, especially the math teachers. They struggled with it. They'll be the first ones to tell you that they taught it wrong last year because they didn't quite understand it themselves, and so they're refiguring it out this year. And so it goes back to kind of that conversation of instruction and what's happening in the classroom. And that's where I would say the biggest impact has happened where with the CERs, is that instructional piece. It's also another data point besides the NWEA where teachers come together and look at student data and talk about student data and who did well and who didn't do well and why they did well and what's happening in this class compared to that class. Like, why did your students score so well in reasoning, but mine didn't. And so it's facilitating those conversations which were not happening before. That's the biggest area of growth that we've seen. Yes.
Okay, you all can ask a question?
Yeah.
And we're going back to the CER, and this is something that does, I've heard some comments about it, about some of the teachers using some of the assessments that you've been giving, the NWA and grades for the kids themselves. Are the teachers using these CERs as a part of the student's actual grade? Or is this something that is just for the benefit of learning about the student and how they're doing with the class? Because sometimes I get a feeling that there should be continuity or that using these as part of the actual grading of the student is something that is problematic for me.
So when it comes to teacher grades, the ed code's very clear that teachers have control over their grades, and so while I can mandate that they give the CERs, I can't mandate that they put them in their grade book.
That's what I'm concerned about. I'm saying that though kids may improve on them, I'm against you, if this is, I would not as a teacher, that's why I'm using this, use it as a method to grade the student. As far as his improvement in class, yes, but I don't know that it would be something that I would use, because what can I say, it's not very concrete in terms of the way the teacher would address it, the way it's graded and so on. Even though there may be a rubric, I wonder about using it as a test, like giving a test. I just taught something about a subject and then I use the grade for that. This is not something where you actually teach it. It's like I don't know how to describe it.
Tool.
Yeah,
So my teachers are teaching how to write it and what to write and the structure of it. The CER writing is not something new. It's just putting an acronym, which is what we do in education. We put acronyms to everything of how students were writing before. English and history teachers and actually science teachers have been doing it for a long time. And the CER writing is huge in the NGSS standards. And in the assessment for NGSS, that's the new science standards.
Yeah, I know.
In terms of teachers putting it in their grade book, my teachers, at least the ones I've had conversations with, have been really great about being reflective of, did I teach this well to the point where it should go in the grade book? Like if you were to ask an English and a history teacher, they spend so much time instructing on it and going over it and doing practice CERs. They feel very strongly that they should assess students that way. If you were to ask my math teachers, I don't think any of them put them in their grade books last year because they all felt like they didn't do it justice teaching it to the students. So it really is kind of what's happening in the classroom that makes that determination of whether it should go in the grade book or not.
I know you can't dictate what they put, but the math was the one that concerned me.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Ready?
Okay.
Ready? Hi, I'm so glad to talk to you about Hawthorne's goals. Thank you so much for having me here. I'm gonna skip academics and we'll go there at the end because that'll be all those pieces. In terms of our attendance, I know student services is gonna talk a bit more, but we at Hawthorne are just below 95% of meeting where we needed to be. We're talking a lot about absenteeism and chronic absenteeism versus like actual attendance, and having that conversation around kids coming to school. We're having that conversation at every staff meeting, at every PTA meeting, every time we have a PAC meeting, just reinforcing that. Teachers are sending it in their weekly bulletins. We're talking about it all the time. As of now, we've sent 64 first letters out and 14 second letters. We're seeing that it's the same, that we're having an issue more with chronic absenteeism, and it's the same families that are continuing to be out, same kids, and often it's because of illness or an ongoing something that's happening. But we've met with 3 in-person meetings. We're calling to find out when kids are absent more than 3 days in a row, what's going on, how do we get them back in school. And for elementary, we really see that like we spent a lot of time telling kids to stay home, and still we don't want runny noses all over the place. That makes one kid sick to the next kid sick to the next kid sick, and at the same time saying like, come to school. Like, we send mismatched messages all the time, and so we're constantly saying the big message around like school's important, being at school is important, staying at school is important, being here, and it sets a pattern for all the way through 12th grade. We have 14 additional meetings that are coming up in the next 2 weeks, just from some of those chronic absentee places.
Does anybody not show up to the absentee?
No.
Yes.
Yes.
We haven't had that yet.
Very adamant response.
Uh-huh.
In terms of our behavior expectations, we're continuing along our path of hero and talking a lot about those pre-referral interventions as different from office discipline referrals. We've been sharing the data around pre-referral interventions per grade level. We pulled it from ARIES, and we're looking at what are we inputting, or is there some patterns that we're seeing either in grades or in classes or with students? Are we doing enough to intervene? There's a systematic approach to that with PBIS. And then also to give back those, a little bit more about what Mr. Stewart was saying is that we can't share data with you that you haven't inputted. So is this an accurate representation of what your pre-referral interventions or like low-level discipline referrals would be before they're coming to the office? And starting at the beginning of second semester, we've said we don't see anyone in the office without an office discipline referral form. You need to tell us why they're here, what's happening, so that we have some real clear documentation and we can go back to that data. We are continuing to work on our PD for signature practices with PBIS. Like one of the key ones is that for every negative interaction that there's 5 positive. That should be like a baseline signature practice of what we're doing in every classroom. And just remembering and reiterating that, like when you've had something, especially with the little person, a negative interaction, like how important it is to follow up with that. And we've formalized our check-in, check-out process with some real clear data around scores for that, and the check-in, check-out is one specific way of a student interacting with a teacher that's not, or an adult on campus that's not their teacher. The key part of that is that they have a second adult that they're talking to on a daily basis with specific goals, and they have a score for those goals, and then that data is noted and like looked at often to say like, how do you get into check-in, check-out, what's the goal there, and how do you get out of check-in, check-out? And no one's on check-in, check-out without parents knowing that they're on that system. In terms of social emotional learning, we're continuing with our counselor lessons and our second step lessons. We also have several skills groups that are being offered and are going ongoing with our counselor, with our psychologist, or with our LMFT. We have some teachers that are leading some of them, and they're at different times of the day for different grade levels, where students can either opt in with the skills group or we can meet at an SST meeting and say, you know what, this is what the student needs in terms of some social emotional learning. We're using our solution wheel. In fact, we shared it with the city of Beverly Hills, the adventure camp and the STAR classes. They asked us to share that with them and teach
And with Horace Mann.
And teach their staff how to use it and to implement it so that the school day continues all the way through to 6 o'clock with those same expectations on that same campus. In addition to that, I think that when we first came, we were just rolling it out, and now we see that it's really being implemented. I called a student down. I got an email from a dad. Said that there was a conflict, and I talked to the student. I called the student down to say, hey, what's going on? And she said to me, oh, my friend and I, we decided we're just going to use the solution wheel when we have it. We're good. Great. Oh yeah. It was like the quickest conference. Great. It was amazing. And then we have 12 students in a mentoring system, so that looks a little bit like a check-in, check-out, but it is not as formalized as that. It's a student that sees somebody for a longer period of time, but less often. So we have 12 different students that are meeting with everyone from admin to our campus security to other teachers, and they're having lunch once a week to check in on a longer term goal. So it's like sort of a separate piece from that, but still clear goals, clear understanding of how they get in, what's their goal when they're there, and how to move out of that intervention. Okay. Community engagement. We have Career Day on Friday with 42 speakers. We're really happy to have that. Very exciting. We've had increased attendance on some of the Walk to School Wednesdays, and there are PTA meetings. We're looking for increased attendance at our ELAC meeting. We do know that we had a representative that went to DLAC. We're working on like really sharing what's happening in instruction at every time we're in front of any parent body. So anytime we're in front of PAC, meaning the administration in front of PAC, in front of ELAC, in front of PTA, that we're sharing some of our best instructional practices, and we're doing a math talk at all of those different meetings, talking about what's happening on our data chats and our conversations, sharing some of this data that you're seeing today, also with general PTA meetings, and putting general PTA parents through some of the math activities where they want to question what sort of thinking is happening in math and challenging why that's happening, giving them an experience with what their kids are having. And our open house is actually coming up in February. Because of our move, we've moved Hawthorne's open house till the end of February instead of the end of the school year. So we're excited to share that piece that's progress, not product, and see what that looks like. Okay, so that sort of takes us to academics. In our academic piece, we did January data tracks. We had one-on-one conversations about growth and achievement. And we looked not just at iReady, but also at FactsWise and DRA. FactsWise, I wrote about it a little bit in our Hawthorne Happenings, but it's a lower grade way of assessing mathematical continuum and understanding around mathematical concepts and breaking apart for number sense. And we really use it in first and second grade, but as we looked at FactsWise scores, upper grade teachers are more interested in also learning about that and understanding that there might still be gaps in third and fourth graders, sort of like what Mr. Margot said. Is there gaps that are falling over, right, from high elementary school into middle school? Are there gaps from first and second grade that are now coming into third and fourth, and still we need to hit exactly where our kids need to learn before we can teach them the grade level pieces? And so we've expanded that. The same with DRA, which is a diagnostic reading assessment, which is a one-on-one assessment of listening to students' fluency and comprehension. And that's expanded through third, and next year it'll be extended up to fourth grade. We looked at iReady. So in our iReady makes, I can't remember, maybe Mrs. Marcus asked it, or Mrs. Cherry asked it, about is there a target for where we want to be and target for what it looks like for achievement. iReady puts in that target. It gives every single student from where they are a target goal for where they need to be at the end of the year. It's their annual goal, and it's supposed to be hit over the course of a year. And it gives them a stretch goal. So an annual goal is kids working at grade level, at normal progress, meeting an annual goal of where they should be. That's separate from grade level. So if a student's at grade level, they'll still get an annual goal. If they're below grade level, they'll also get an annual goal. They also have a stretch goal, which is more of like a high level, like achievable but lofty sort of goal, but also the difference to like a factor that's gonna help close their gap if they're not quite on grade level. And so what I noted on the first page is that 47% of our students have already met their 1 year goal in reading, and 24% have already met it in math. So at this point they should only get 50%, but they've already met it. It's like the first thing on academics on that first page. We should only get 50%, and we already have 47% of our students that are at 100% or more
Of their
personal target goal.
Where you met them where they were, and they
Yeah, when we said 1 year's growth in 1 year's time, we have 47% of our students in reading that are already met their 1 year's growth in 1 year's time, and 24% that have already met their 1 year's growth in 1 year's time.
That's great.
So just to flip over, okay, I realize that these are very, very small numbers, I apologize, but let's just look at the colors for a second. The first is like overall placement. If you can see it, it says 429 students out of 533. That's because kindergarten has only taken it once, and it's our first year using iReady. We assessed kindergarten off schedule, and so they've only taken it once, and they'll only end up taking it twice. We'll do that better next year, but that's the discrepancy in our numbers there. And so it's only looking at the 429 students who should get both the beginning of the year BOY and middle of the year MOY. So the top line is where students are now at the middle of the year, green being at or above grade level, yellow being about 1 grade level below, and red being 2 or more grade levels below. And you can see where they were at the beginning of the year.
Got it, so the green has increased significantly.
Yeah, the green has increased significantly. That's for the whole school. You can see really specifically, fourth grade in math is making huge progress. I sort of noted at the bottom that they're making the most. They went from 33 students at or above grade level to 65 of their students at or above grade level, and that's out of 92 students.
What did you do? And what do you attribute that to?
So what we contribute this to two things. One is like the general teaching. In math specifically, they've really been working on bigger picture about concepts and cognitively guided instruction, both with partners in practice, in really integrating that into our learning, into our classroom teaching. On top of that, we know that from like if you dig down deep into the data, that our tier 3 instruction with Learning Lab, that's really making a difference, right? We know that those interventions that are happening are moving kids over. I noted that also in the highlight areas. And then iReady has its own program, right? iReady has a personal pathway, so it gives a diagnostic test, that's the beginning of the year, and it puts each student, based on their skills and their answers, on a personalized pathway, and we are working toward having every student complete 2 lessons in language arts and 2 lessons in math every single week. And it's correlated to about 45 minutes, and the last thing is that what we looked at when we did our data chats was not just this data, which was great, and we dug down deep by grade level, by teacher, and by student, but also does that correlate with how many lessons passed in their personalized pathway? Did you want to?
I was gonna say, I know we keep talking about tier 1, tier 2, tier 3. Can you explain for them? Because I only learned that in the last like 5 to 10 years. So
Sure.
explain what we mean by those interventions.
In the same way that it works for PBIS, we've sort of been talking about that green, yellow, red pyramid. This is just another side. So PBIS might be one side, and in what Dr. Scon said, which is like MTSS, the multi-tier systems of support, academics is another side. So 80% of our students should do well with basic first level, first best instruction in our classroom, right? That should be that you're always moving groups, you're always being able to work with different students at different levels, you're giving an opportunity to work with this person a little bit more, work with that person a little bit more. Everyone should be able to do that. Tier 2 intervention should be, oh, I'm pulling this student to the back table, I'm focusing a lot more, I'm reteaching something, I'm front-loading something. And then our tier 3 intervention is our pull-out intervention, and we call that Learning Lab at our site, and it's getting really clear instruction, not based on grade level, but based on where they actually are, and helping them to make the connections between the understanding that they have and the grade level pieces that they need, both in language arts and math. And then the very, very tippy top of the intervention pyramid would be special education. So some people say it's like the very top, tier 3, some people say it's not quite on the pyramid, but when I'm talking about tier 3 interventions, it's not our special education interventions, it's our Learning Lab small group intervention.
Right. So increasingly, as you go up in number of tier, it is the way that you are more increasingly restrictively addressing a student. So tier 1 is for most who can just be just fine, whereas sort of tier 3 and tier 4 are students who really need that.
It's usually individualized, and what I refer to it as, it's really, so we use the word intervention a lot, but what does that mean? It's really targeted skill instruction. So I need help in decoding, and so I'm receiving that targeted skill instruction in decoding or in comprehension or math calculation, whatever the area of need is for me. So, you know, we kind of coined the phrase intervention, but that's really what it is.
Right. Thank you.
And then what we're looking for so we're looking to make sure that when we're capturing all of these students that are living in red, do we know who all of them are? And then we were sort of talking about what Dr. Stern said about high achieving, low growth learners. Right. We are working with, iReady came to our site, it happened to be Monday, I think they're coming to you tomorrow, we basically mapped out every teacher mapped out every kid on a 4-quadrant axis, where achievement is the y-axis going up and down, and growth is the x-axis. So where do you put each child? Are they low achieving, low growth, low achieving, high growth? Are they high achieving, low growth, high achieving, high growth? And where are they? And then what's happening there? Like, how are we addressing that? And then in our data chats, we put together a student goal sheet, which was like, every single student needs to have a goal, even if they're doing great. Even if they're in the green, lived in the green, spent their whole life in the green, have always been in the green, what's their goal? And then even what we're really working on also is that students that we identify in some way as receiving services from Learning Lab, receiving services from special education, receiving EL support, targeted EL support, that we still own them in the classroom. So what, as a classroom teacher, are you doing in terms of your goal to address their need in what specific area? Even digging down deep enough to say, when in a week are you going to hit that?
Wow.
So we've been talking about that a lot, both in our data chats, but also in our weekly grade level conversations around like, what does that look like? And people shared not just what Mr. Bugby was saying around what are their strategies, but also what's their strategies for keeping track. So that was also a conversation of like, how are they keeping track of, did I hear that kid answer a question this week? Did I hear a student read out loud? So they're really sharing a lot. And that's leading us into our PLC work as we really get familiar with our PLCs. Is one of the fundamental pieces is that a teacher cannot do it by themselves. They cannot meet every student's needs on their own, and they really need to be able to share and work together and share the idea around we need to really help students together. And that is movement also, I think you were saying that we've really come to a place where we can share data among the grade level and say, what are we celebrating as a grade level? What are you doing well? What are you needing work on? And how do we support each other? That's it. I think that's
Thank you. Can you help me understand the numbers here? Like, for example, on your math page,
yeah.
4th grade, how do I add this up? Because at the top for mid-year, I'm seeing, I think it's a 29 and 32. Am I adding those two together to get all the green?
39, 32.
Can you tell me one more time?
It's a 39, 32.
Sure.
It's super tiny. I will get
It's okay. I'm just trying to understand how I'm getting to 100.
4th grade math.
4th grade math. So then middle year, MOY. The first number on the left-hand side of the green, Noah says it's a 39 or is it a 29? 39. Oh, got it. Okay. So
39, 32, 26, and 3. Oh my gosh.
So then,
oh my God, it's on my hand. That's why I can't see.
okay, but then if you bump up to 2nd grade, for example, middle of the year, it's 2 numbers there. So am I in the green? I add those together to get the number.
Yeah, they're actually 2 different greens. One is a green with like black slashes.
Oh, it's the crosshatch.
That's like, and then that's why it's the first 20%, and then there's another 20%, and then the same is true for red.
Got it.
Although we've really noticed in iReady that there's the 2 or more grade levels below. It doesn't exist for 1st and 2nd grade because you can't be 2 or more grade levels below,
Yeah.
so you're not going to see any of that red. What's it called? Hashing marks? Hash marks?
Okay.
But you can see it really, really faintly in the green, and you can see it up at the top that it looks different.
So it's like here we don't have a blue, but they're creating a blue with the numbers.
Yeah, they do green yellow.
Correct, good point.
I got it.
iReady doesn't do blue.
Got it. Okay.
And then, I mean, at the bottom, I really talked about actual students. So in math, we had 72 students overall that were in red, and now we have 23 in any red. And at the beginning of the year, we only had 139 students in any green level, like at or above grade level, and now we have 230.
Got you. So the 5th grade is actually doing decent, and that's been our uncomfortable spot.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome, right?
Yeah.
It's really something.
And they started with relatively high, and they've just continued to increase with shrinking red and shrinking yellow, which is what we want to see.
Did the parents, have you felt like they are participating in this in terms of getting the data and getting behind what each child's personal plan is?
Yes, so we did our first diagnosis at the beginning of the year, and we printed out the parent support, the family page, for our conferences in October. So every single teacher handed that over in October and went through what does it look like. They turn off the family page until the end of January. They have some bigger things that they do in terms of iReady with us getting through our second diagnostic. Some of it had to do with the fact that our teachers are new and we wanted to make sure that they had the training and understanding. So as soon as I think Course Man is done training with iReady, they'll turn on that family access again and we'll send a note home about how to get there. And then they'll be able, all families will be able to see the graph. There's like a bar graph basically that shows them their first diagnostic and a second diagnostic with plus or minus how many points they've gotten. And the actual number is sort of arbitrary with a scaled score, but it does give them like, you know, you are supposed to grow 49 points, but you only grew, an annual goal of 49 points, but you've only grown 11, even though it's halfway through the year where you should have grown around 25, or you're only supposed to grow 49 points and you've grown 72. And they can see that, and then like sort of going the other direction, like on the x-axis, is the grade level band. So you can see that you might have growth, but you're so far below grade level, or you might have growth and you're above grade level. So you can see both of those. That'll go out to parents, I think, next week.
And when it goes out, are you meeting with them or is it just going out?
It's just going out. We have had SSTs, like we had a couple SSTs in the last week, and that's what we're showing parents around, like, this is where our concerns are, this is the work that we're doing. So we haven't shared that yet, but we definitely, like, with parent conferences that are happening, you know, we have a couple of those parent conference days. I know that there were some families that had parent conferences last week, and that's what they talked about and showed exactly that. That we're gonna encourage parents to look.
Thank you. Wonderful, thank you.
Ready?
Yes.
All right, Horace Mann. Academics, I'm gonna go general and then we'll break it down into the data in a minute. Baseline early September, we did another assessment in December, like Ms. Tabor said. We have approximately 60 students in intervention, in that tier 3 intervention. We've had 30 SSTs, for those of you as we talk in acronyms, Student Success Team, where the teacher or a parent or administration can bring to the SST team if we have specific concerns about a student that we want to look more closely at. Attendance is a topic of every admin meeting, which we do every Monday morning. We've sent out approximately 58 letter 1 attendance letters, 8 letter 2s, and had 8 SART meetings. And yes, data, we've had 2 parents not show.
To the actual SART meeting?
Correct.
So the SART meeting is kind of like a hearing. I mean, it's a little scary. If you don't show up, you're really a mess.
Correct. And
At the district level, I guess.
Oh,
At the
not
site
the-
level,
You're talking
SART.
SART.
Right, SART to DART.
SART
Yes, to DART,
is
yes.
site, DART is district.
Yes.
So they didn't show up to the
Your school
SART
based one.
meetings, and
They
thank
may
you to
eventually
this
get-
department,
To DART.
we're dealing with that,
Got it.
okay? 35 families have completed STIS, which is great and has really helped our attendance this year, so thank you for that.
Craig, STIS is?
Short-term independent study.
Yeah.
Thank-
So it
Thank
takes,
you.
it pulls them out of the absenteeism scenario.
That's exactly right. If you're going on vacation, if you're going to Israel for a week, go, take your kids. You're gonna learn more there than you will learn in school. However, you do still have schoolwork. So complete the schoolwork, turn it back in. Teachers have to grade it. We document it in Aries, our data management system, and they get school credit for those days. So that's really affecting our attendance, which Ms. Collins-Williams will be talking about. 35 completed, 9 pending. Behavior expectations, we have weekly MMA assemblies. Those are recorded assemblies that we started during COVID, but our kids love them. Every Tuesday morning, it's the 3 administrators, Mrs. Delajani, Ms. Pierce. We talk about behavior expectations, we give out awards. It's all recorded, we send it to teachers. They play it on Wednesday mornings whenever it's convenient for them. We keep it 7 minutes or less. They love it. We
What
also
does
do
MMA stand for in your world?
mini morning assembly. Thank you for
I
asking.
thought like you and that were in a cage match or something.
No,
That's
but
W.
I know where I would put my money.
MMA is mixed martial arts.
Yes, it is. Yep.
If that's a dodgeball.
Dodgeball would be fun, but we're at the outdoor science camp, so we won't be there.
Hey, Drew had a boxing bag at the finals.
I love it. At the MMAs, we review our Husky High Five behavior expectations. Each classroom has done a behavior matrix that they have posted in their classroom of our Husky High Five and the different areas of the school. What does it mean to be safe at the lunch shelter, in your classroom? So we have those matrices in each class. Let's see. We monitor behavior expectations every Monday morning at our admin meeting, and we share the behavior data with staff at staff meetings. SEL, topics covered. Taking turns, very important. We don't use the word sharing anymore, so please take notes. Now it's taking turns, which we learned in our classes that most of our TK teachers attended. Sharing is out, taking turns is in. So taking turns, following directions, filling someone's bucket, positive thoughts, saying it respectfully, empathy, paying it forward, and the gift is giving. Community engagement, we have our weekly whoop, our Husky Howler, which is from the PTA. We have our PAC, we have our PTA monthly and executive board meetings. Each grade level has one event that parents are invited to. For instance, 4th grade has African drums that Noah's gonna be coming to. 2nd and 3rd grades have the Puppet Lady, where the kids write a short skit. They make puppets and they do a performance for the parents. We will be doing a dance, sort of a dance festival, like the African drums, where the parents come in just for the final lesson to watch. So it's not an actual assembly, parents are coming in for the lesson. But we do have each grade level parents come in for one event per year. Okay, going to the data, this is where I nerd out. So if you get bored, I have no pride in terms of if you say thank you, that's enough. Okay, we can move on.
We want it.
Okay, so the first page is reading. On the left, you have beginning of the year. On the right, you have the middle of the year. What you're really looking for is for the green to be bigger, the yellow to be smaller, and the red to be small-est. So if you look, you can see up at the top is school-wide. So up at the top, I did the numbers for you, so if you want to write them down. For reading, beginning of the year assessment, 47% of our kids were either meeting or exceeding. 36% were just below. And 16% were 2 grade levels or more below. On the right, we went up to 53% of our students are at or above. 27% are just below, and 10% are 2 grade levels or more below.
What was the first number on MOY?
53.
Thank you, sorry.
Yep, no worries. So you can see we're doing what we like to call trickling up. We're minimizing red, we're minimizing yellow, and then increasing green. Down below that is a breakdown by the standards. So this is something I'm not going to take the time here, but this is where we nerd out in data chats. This is why we spend a full day with teachers digging deep, because I'll get to it in a minute. 3rd grade scores are killing it, but they realize, wait a minute, they're actually performing low in something we already taught. So that goes back to, we use this data to guide our teaching. Because we may realize, I already taught that and they didn't fully get it, so we need to come back to that for a minute and check in.
How do you know that? How do you draw that conclusion based on the
So
data? Sorry to
the
interrupt
middle, no, I appreciate it. The middle set of data is by, I don't know, what's the word I'm looking for? Not by, thank you, by domain. So it might be number and operations.
Oh, it really breaks it down to topic?
It goes even deeper. I didn't include that because it would be 36 pages. So this gives you the domain. There's another report that gives you every single child and then across every single standard and what color they're performing in each standard. So I can jump into it now.
Cheat sheet on instruction of where to go to.
100%. We're gonna talk about 3rd grade scores in a minute. They are killing it. Our 3rd grade team is phenomenal. They realized, wait a minute, we already taught number and operations. That's the first thing we teach. But what happened across the board that the kids are in gray, not in green. So before I could even go on with my data chat, teachers are off on a discussion about, wait a minute, what happened? We need to fix this. And that's the kind of thing as a leader, teachers are taking the lead, you step back, let them have that conversation, and then ask, what do you need from me to make this happen? So we'll talk in more detail about what we're gonna do about that. Let's see. Okay, so flip over to math. This is where it gets really interesting. Again, beginning of year on left, middle of year on the right. Numbers for the left, 37% green, 48% yellow, 14% red. Where are my numbers there? What does that say? 50.
On the right?
37, 20, I didn't do my numbers.
57.
57 green, 48
38
yellow.
7 yellow.
It looks like
and 5.
5.
So
You?
that's a
You have
good
2 sets of
improvement.
red there, by the way. Can you
Yeah.
explain the 2 sets of
Yeah,
red?
it's the same as the green. So the green with the hash marks is super green.
I see.
So those kids are far above. Red, same thing. The hash marks, those kids are
There's a division in
super,
there.
super low.
But, okay, I see what you're saying.
Okay, then if you look at the next set of data, sort of mid-page, you'll see that the green is increasing, the yellow is decreasing, and the red is decreasing even more. I'm gonna bring it down to the lower set of data. 3rd grade, I'm gonna go left to right. So go 3rd grade, was it 39% green at the beginning of the year? They've moved up to 64% in the green, which is
Phenomenal.
huge. And we're gonna talk about more about why that's even bigger. 4th grade went 39% to 55%. 5th grade went from 47% to 67%. And that's at grade level or above. This is important because it goes back to the 5th grade question that we've all been asking, and every educator in America has been asking for the past 10 years. Our CASP scores are not showing what our kids are doing. So it brings back that question, and we've had this conversation with 5th grade teachers. What is it? We don't know if it's testing fatigue. We don't know if the test is showing things differently. We cannot seem to, and it's nationwide, get our daily performance to match the CASP scores. I'm really curious, this is my first time working with Irene. I'm really curious to see if this aligns better, because we know STAR math didn't really align. It gave us an idea, but it wasn't super specific. So we're curious to see how this goes. Go ahead.
Sorry.
Wait, let me do
yeah.
one thing, write that one down. If you didn't notice, our 3rd grade ELA scores, are you ready? 82% of our kids, 3rd grade ELA at or above in reading.
Yeah.
So shout out to our 3rd grade team. I already talked about 3rd grade notice, number, and operations. So this is one of those things with data chats, that's when they realize, and they're going back to that. They'll be teaching that again for a week, but then they're also gonna be throwing in a math talk. So this goes back to our PLC that we've been working on, the conference that we all attended, almost everyone in this room. That Professional Learning Communities conference that we went to. The 4 questions from that are the questions that we ask at data chats. What are they supposed to learn? What are we supposed to learn? Maggie, help me. How do we know
they learned it?
What do we do for those who haven't learned it, and what are we doing for those who already learned it? So in data chats, we're focusing on those questions. So the investment that we're making in the PLCs is really paying off with the individual teachers, because they're now starting to ask those questions of each other and themselves. We nerd out a little bit more. Judy, did you think of your question?
Yes. My question is there a world in which a grade level teacher could take these assessments along with the students to experience the experience and also to calibrate the instruction, and then also at the end of the school year do the same thing for CAS? So to get in there and figure, and you know what I'm saying?
I hear exactly
We're
what you're saying.
hoping that these materials will be better indicators, but can we figure it out for ourselves along the way, or is that impossible?
Impossible to get cast. We can look at the different assessments or the test released questions, but we cannot have a teacher take the cast.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Could you have, I'm just wondering, you know, sometimes I'm wild, could you have a teacher look over the shoulder of a very comfortable student who would not be bothered by that?
Maggie's gonna have a heart attack.
Some kids would not.
Blood after they.
Yeah, so it's not allowed, it's impermissible.
It's
not allowed.
Yeah, I have to say, if I recall correctly, when we were at CSBA and we were speaking to the superintendent for LCAP that's been using the iReady for a while. I believe he mentioned that the iReady assessments were correlating to the CAS, so that they were seeing more of a correlation there. So I think we'll wait and see.
Yeah.
So last year, at the beginning of the year, Ms. Mayberry took some of our teachers, their fourth, fifth grade teachers, to the CAS conference, and sort of connected us with other districts that didn't see any learning loss from their CAS scores after COVID. And again and again, our teachers ended up sitting down with those school districts and teachers from other school districts to say, what did you use? And they said, iReady, over and over again.
Okay.
And so when we looked at it, that I think was the pull around elementary being intrigued with iReady, is that they had heard from other school districts like how effective it was and how much it correlated with CAP. We're hoping that that's true.
Well,
It's not perfect, but it's the best that's out there. That's why we move.
That they were really seeing that movement.
And then just to answer Ms. Manacher's question, so we also have a poll. It's not as cute as a sloth, but we also have a poll for kids that are rushing through, and so we've had teachers and administrators sit next to students, like basically they'll come back with an end of diagnostic where they've done it too fast, and we had staff sit down next to a student and just reset it and said, okay, can you do it correctly?
Let's really do this.
And then, so we have had the ability, we can't take it ourselves, but we have seen those questions on iReady. And so we see what it looks like and say like, okay, answer it. Like, so, and some of that is because we've got to get real answers. And so that their like individual pathway is set up correctly so that it's on what they need to work on. And we've seen that both with, in our site, we've seen it both with like our students that are struggling learners, that it's just like a lot and that's the test fatigue that they always have. Every time you put a test with them, it's like hard for them. But also some of our highest students that are just not interested, and it's like, no, this is not real growth. No, do this again. So
Well,
it
it's
hasn't
good
that
that
many.
you seem to be getting really nuanced data, so let's see.
Yeah, I mean, it looks like it's having an impact, which is exciting.
Yeah, the important, during the data chats, we also noticed, yes, we look at the growth for every single individual child, but we also looked at the no growth or little growth kids, and we talked to teachers. Apparently, according to Mrs. Wong, who's used iReady for years, those high growth kids, it's hard for them to show growth
That's what I was saying.
mid-year.
Yeah, they plateau at a moment in time.
So we're looking to end of year, but we did talk to each individual teacher for every single one of those low growth or no growth kids and asked, is this truly reflective of where they are, or should they retake it? And teachers know the kids better than any of us. And the teachers would say, yeah, he's doing great, but I don't know that he's gonna score much higher right now. So we did reassess a few kids, but not all of them. So we did take a really close look. Also, if you look at that math in the middle, that's gonna look at the specific domains of math. Generally speaking, we don't teach measurement and geometry until the end of the year. So the fact that those kids are scoring as well as they are when they haven't been taught yet is great. So imagine when they have been taught. We also did talk during data chats of what can we do to prep them for it. So we're talking about beginning of the year, all the way through. We do math talks all the time. Throw in a geometry math talk, just so they start hearing the language, so that it's not brand new along the way. So teachers are now starting to talk about math talks for measurement and for geometry.
It's also nice to just at a level too, because there's always discrepancy in data. So it was nice that it was even like this. At one point there was a conversation going on where some teachers were saying, this just doesn't make sense. Why doesn't this make sense? Why is this so low? And then it was, okay, wait, this student started late and so missed the beginning of the year. So there's just times where you want to be able to see why is there a discrepancy someplace, and for them to be able to figure that out. Or that he started later, she did, and can we get them in there again and do this? And so it's helpful to be able to look to see where some of the errors are too.
And it's really interesting in the data chats because we as administrators may not know, but the teachers are gonna know they're going through a really rough divorce.
Yeah.
That's why his scores aren't improving. Okay, then let's get him some support for that. So data chats, having the data to be reflective, and then having the data chats for teachers to really be able to look at it, and the fact that now our teachers are ready. They have no hesitation, they look forward to data chats, most of them. But they like talking about the kids and the progress and they get into it, so it's fun.
Thank you.
Great, sounds like it's inspiring.
It is.
Thank you so much, amazing. Certificated and classified employees.
Yeah, he gets to talk.
Where to go back?
Not yet.
Waiting.
Not yet, not yet.
Yeah, I got more coffee in me, here we go.
Oh, God.
All right, so actually,
Oh,
I get
no!
to go
Get backed up.
Oh, crushed.
first. Calm down. Calm down.
Take a deep breath.
Okay, so it's actually really nice to have gone in reverse today because as I'm sitting here listening and we know these things, but it's just in my head I'm really thinking like we're seeing the benefits of reconfiguration here. We're having consistency across the district. We're able to talk and have conversations about the same things in the same manner at each one of our campuses. For example, the attendance letters that we're talking about, those are going out consistently, whereas they weren't before because we have consistent protocols and procedures. We have the start in the dark process. We have common instructional language and practices, our PLCs. And I just really want to give a shout out to the site administrators. I mean, the ability for me to do my job is easier because the amazing things that they're doing at their sites and the consistency that we have across the district. It used to be a very different conversation every time you went to one school. You would talk about one thing at one school, and you would talk about the same topic in a completely different way at another school. Now, yes, they are doing things that are relevant to their campuses, but we have a overall common language. So just want to take the time to say thank you to the board for that vision, thank you to Dr. Brady for that vision, thank you to Cabinet and my counterpart back here for when we were here long nights doing that, and it's great to see the outcome of that. All right, on to the data. So we talked a lot about academics. The student services piece of that is that for the red and the red with the lines, we are still working in conjunction with the site administrators, the teachers, and the student services department to use the iReady data and the NWEA data along with our targeted skill instruction to help move the students forward. Remembering that they do have some additional challenges that make traditional learning hard for them, but still working and pushing and looking to grow. So the site administrators did a great job of that. I'm going to move on. Attendance, let's talk attendance. So I put a beautiful little tiny graph in there just to test your eyesight. We are very, very, very close to our goal year long. I want to talk about a couple of numbers. So as you see, we are at about 94.5% if you average all those numbers together. But I want to talk about why. We had 3 significant time periods between the beginning of school and January 27th when I ran this data. One being October 13th. The second period being the 2 days of Thanksgiving, November 20th and November 21st, and the days right before the winter break, December 18th, 19th, and 20th. If you subtract those days from the data, we are at our goal. We are at 95.66%. So I want to congratulate the sites and thank our parents and then the community just to say, you know, we are really doing much better overall at addressing attendance. Now, I also want to look at it historically. If you look at the second grid, when we talk about chronic absenteeism, because that's really where, like Mrs. Caver and Mr. Bugby said, that's where we're really having to have intervention. We are having a small amount, a group of students at each campus that are having difficulty coming to school on a regular basis. So if you look, I gave you some historical data here. If you look before COVID, we were really low. Like anything below 10% is considered good. As a district, we were at 9.1%. It's on my one pager in the second set of grids. Yeah, no problem. I'm the same way. I got to see it. So 2017, 2018, 9.1%. 18, 19, 9.5. COVID, after COVID, those 2 years, 17, 18%. That is indicative across the state. We were still below other surrounding districts who were up in the 30s, but it's still more than we want. Okay, now let's talk about us specifically this year. I kind of consider this our baseline year post-COVID because this is our full year of being back in in-person instruction and everything kind of resetting to normal. Our first quarter, so we're looking at from August through November, we're at 11.2% chronic absenteeism, higher than we want to be. Then we have from November to January 29th, we're creeping up to 13.79 or 13.8. So what are we doing? We have a lot of things going on. There's a weekly discussion between my department and the sites regarding the students who are being chronically absent. You heard about the SART team meetings that are at the school site. We are also having DART team meetings here at the district where we're working with students and families who are in that chronic absenteeism bucket. You know, we are talking about different interventions. We're going to be holding student study team meetings. We're going to have IEP meetings for students who have additional services. But we also talk about things about just how to remind parents and increase or put this on the on the radar of people. Like we give it ideas like, hey, talk to me at the high school. They're talking about attendance in their morning messages on KBEV, you know, things like that, just to put it on the mind of everyone else. This quarter, we're going to really push, though, to intervene with our students who are missing large amounts of school. So they are a smaller percentage, but they affect the total percentage greater because they're missing multiple days. This is what.
I'm just trying to figure, so this is the distribution of the absenteeism by year on this.
The second grade? Yes. Okay. Yes, the chronic absenteeism. Mm-hmm. So those are students who are absent from school more than 10% of the whole year. Some students are missing, you have a range in there. You have some students who are right at the 10%, and you have some students who are up at like 90 to 100%. It really depends. So I'm gonna talk about that when we start talking about our SEL piece and everything else so as well.
Oh, sorry.
I guess I just would have expected that it would have been like the distribution so even. I would have thought it would have been like somewhat weighted in some way.
Well, tell me a little bit more.
Like, is there more absenteeism in elementary school versus in high school, or the reverse? Like,
so we have that data as well, and that data is discussed weekly with the site administrators. There's an email that goes out every morning from my every Monday morning from my department with that data, and we're keeping longitudinal information about the interventions as well as who we're looking at, and they're highlighted on there. But I think the reason that you're seeing kind of this consistency is because remember, the metric for chronic absenteeism set by the California Department of Education, so it's 10% or higher. So we are pulling in all the data and analyzing it to find out where we fall based on that data. And remember that the calculation changes daily, because now we're on, day 112 out of 180. Tomorrow it's a different calculation because we have one more day.
So what is this data telling us? Because from what I can tell in the top chart, we're approximately consistently at 95% attendance across the board, district-wide, all school sites.
Correct.
So
With
that,
few exceptions.
yeah, with a 0.5% here or, so that feels good, and that's where we wanted it to be.
Yes.
And I'm sure it has an impact on the
Yes.
kids and the classroom.
Yes.
I'm not 100% sure what the bottom is saying, so let's go all the way down to the bottom. In the most recent 2023-2024 calculation,
Yes.
13.79% of what? What is
Yeah,
the
that's my
conclusion?
question.
Great. So it's the goal within the goal.
Got it.
And as we learn and we move through this and we start to understand what's happening, so our initial goal is like writing an IEP. We wrote an annual goal.
Are 6% of absent kids, this relates to
Yes.
them? Okay.
Yes, these are the students who don't come to school on a regular basis that are affecting that 6 to 8% of absenteeism that's keeping us from being higher than 95%. So if you break it down and go across, at Beverly Hills High School, of all the students who are enrolled there, 13% of the students are chronically absent. 14.7 at VVMS, 15.24 at Hawthorne, and 12.57 at Horace Mann, for a total district average of 13.8. Now,
Wouldn't that have affected the attendance that's up above and brought that down? That's what I don't.
it is calculated in there, and it is, but remember, it's a moving target, Mrs. Marcus, because of every day it changes. That's why we have to do the full calculation to get the 13.8. It is mixed in though, it is accounted for. Because remember, it's usually, it's kind of the same kids over and over, so it's not like it's 100 kids missing every day. It's a small percentage, so it has a smaller impact.
The same kids.
It's the same kids.
Is the
yes.
absenteeism the same, or is it for elementary, I would think it's different than high school, and, is there some sort of trend to watch?
So that is a very good question, and that is what the purpose of our SART and DART process is, as well as our parent liaison and our social emotional, our LMFTs, is looking at the child and the families in our community holistically. Because a lot of times when the sites send out the letters and then they contact the site administrator, there's information that comes back that is relevant to why this child is missing school. Someone in the home is sick. There are family issues. There are divorces. There's changes in living situations. So then that's why we are able to. I'm sorry, there's a lot of commotion. We're able to help do kind of like a wraparound. How can we support you? How can we, we're having those conversations. Do you need a referral to someone who can help you with some time off that you need to have some babysitting? Did you lose your utilities? Did you lose a family member and the child was very close to them and they just don't want to come to school? How can we help support that? So many different things. So it's the intervention within the intervention and the goal within the goal. So
and the parent liaison, like for example, that's helping.
So I'm going to talk about that, Mrs. Cherry. Yes.
One of the patterns that we've seen in our SART meetings is travel.
I was just gonna say, in elementary school, I would think most kids are missing because the parents go on vacation.
They go stay with grandma and grandpa for a week or two while parents are gone, and
But I will say, one of them, I'm glad we're having these meetings because we did learn that one parent doesn't live close to us, they live closer to BDMS. And mom sleeps late sometimes and doesn't walk the kid to school. So we reached out, I know our parent community, I know who lives over there, I know who can do a walking school bus. And they scoop up that kid and get that kid to school.
We created a carpool.
but that's the beauty of now the district-wide process, the
net.
the
Net.
net, the casting net, but also just having the processes in place. I mean, I can't emphasize that enough, because before it used to be siloed, targeted, like we may do something here, but we aren't doing that over here, or we're not even aware that we can do that. We have the large system in place, but it's also customized for the families that need it at each site. We have, some dark processes going on with students who are in this chronic absenteeism group, and they are attending school more frequently. Are they where we want them to be? No, but are they better than they were? I mean, we had a 70% increase in a couple students who just weren't coming to school, and now they're there 2, 3, 4 days a week. So it's working. It's just, these are the most impacted students and families, and it's a work in progress.
And it will take time.
And it takes time, and it takes a lot of effort and intervention.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So, Mr. Stewart stole a little bit of my thunder when he talked about his suspensions, but that was great information. Overall, our data, it's hard to see. Those are the ed codes like A1, cause or threaten to, or attempted to cause for harm or threaten or student or staff. But I don't want to focus on that. I want to focus on what we're doing and what the changes that we've seen.
Sorry, which page are you on?
So I'm talking about the bottom one, district-wide behavior and data and trends. So our suspensions are down across the board. So like Mr. Stewart said, apples to apples, I always like to compare same to same. So we're looking at the time frame from the beginning of school through December, right before we went to winter break. For the high school, our suspensions decreased from 31 to 18 from last school year to this year. So as Mr. Stewart said, 42% decrease. From BVMS, we had 18, and then we decreased to 11, so that's a 39% decrease. Our elementary schools, we had one more suspension, but I'm going to say that with a caveat because we are increasing the behavioral expectations. We are going now deeper into our MTSS, our interventions. We're going deeper into our PBIS, our check in, check out, office referrals. The runway is getting shorter. Like you know what you're supposed to do, and now if you're not doing it, you're being held accountable, but still while working through the other means of intervention. What I want to talk about is the increase, the explosion of the pre-referral interventions that we're having. This is why these numbers are smaller. We're reaching kids and we're teaching kids and we're shaping the behavior before they get to the level where we have to suspend them. That's the key, and that's the point. And those have increased. I mean, I could print out hundreds of pages where 2 or 3 years ago I kept going, guys, where are they? What are we doing? What systems do we have in place? But each site has worked very hard to put them in place. You heard some of those things when the principals presented, talking about office referrals. You're talking about what does Sarah say? The wheel, the resolution wheel. Yeah, that's amazing. Like when she showed it to me, I was ecstatic because these are the things that we want our students to know what to do and how to behave without having to have punitive discipline. It doesn't work.
Laura,
Yes.
are all of the infractions listed in that bar chart at the bottom represented suspension?
No.
Okay.
No.
So do you have this data from a year ago to see if these are down? Because the suspension doesn't mean something hasn't gone wrong, right? It's the end result of how you dealt with the situation. But I'm curious to see if we have year-over-year data on actual decreasing of the behavior.
Give me 1 second. I knew you were going to ask that, Noah, so I was having it calculated while we sat here. Let me read it to make sure I don't say something.
If you're that savvy, what are this week's lottery numbers?
If I knew that, I would not be sitting here.
Can I just add real quickly though? Because this year we've made it more of a concerted effort, as Laura said, to have that commonality between school sites, so the comparison data
Yes.
might not, we're being more, kind of proactive about how we enter, what we enter, and consistent between the school sites. So the data we're getting this year, I would say, is more accurate and
100%.
representative of what's actually happening, because we've had very deliberate conversations about what gets entered, where it gets entered, how it gets
That's
entered.
why we made it a goal.
So next year, we would have much
Yeah.
better
Yes.
data than this. I just wanted to be clear that the decrease in suspension doesn't mean a huge increase in good behavior. You know, it may be representative.
But it does in the
Something-
sense that there are interventions in place to stop the behavior that would end up in a suspension in the first place. So that
And
part
that's-
has to be,
and
that
that's-
part has to be
And that's
figured
great,
into
and I
it.
recognize that, I completely recognize that,
Yes.
but.
It's not the
really-
only factor.
Really, until we get more of this next year, will we kind of know where we're trending.
I will follow up with the board with that in our board connection. I want to crunch some more numbers. I have some, but I want to make sure it's apples to apples, like Kelly was saying.
Okay.
Because I can pull it and disaggregate it and then compare it.
Okay, thank you.
But I will say that, kind of like Craig, I do look at this stuff kind of just for fun, and I'm watching the numbers and seeing them, seeing the changes. So we are trending in the right direction. That's why I said data trends.
Thank you.
Okay, next section, because I know Dustin's gonna explode if I don't hurry up. Just in the end part of that, I just want to remind the board, the last time we talked about the district-wide expected behaviors and values, we're still developing those as part of our discipline code. Been doing some good work internally, haven't rolled it out yet, getting a structure in place, but just know that we'll be looking at having an elementary version and a secondary version, and it will address, and it's also looking at our data to make sure that we're hitting the pieces that really will give good structure and support to what we're hoping to teach to students, have parents agree to, and function as as a community. We talked, I'm gonna move on if there's any other questions. We talked a lot about PBIS. I just wanna say, we are moving leaps and bounds. The level and the consistency and the depth at which we're intervening with our students is really, is showing that we're making the right strides. As a district office, we're only really supporting now with the TIF surveys and the mid-year walkthroughs, and then planning to make sure that we prepare our award applications, because remember, we had a couple of sites that had silver and bronze, and we want to make sure that we get credit for the hard work that the sites are doing. And the TFI surveys are ways that we hold ourselves accountable. That stands for Tiered Fidelity Index. Really, it's looking at the percentage and the efficacy of the implementation of the PBIS framework. So the next section, I'll keep going. Our parent liaison is here. She's working with families from every site, doing a lot of great outreach and support, and working again behind the scenes to address things like what Craig gave an example of, or helping parents find resources, or helping work out some internal conflict or turmoil in the home that is affecting the student or not allowing them to access their educational programs. So I'm keeping data on that right now. Just so you know, the process is that there's a referral form that comes from the site principal. On there's information about what the issue is, who to contact, and also kind of what we hope the outcome will be. And so that comes to me. I then meet with the parent liaison. We talk about it. We kind of develop a plan. She then makes contact with the family, and then she kind of works with them to figure out what needs to happen. We have some students on contracts to attend school. We have some families who are engaging in family therapy. Whatever is necessary for the student and the family to help them access education, have a more stable home environment, whatever is keeping them from coming to school, that's in place. So right now we have 28 referrals, but we are working quality over quantity. So we're focusing, we had a conversation with each principal, we asked them to prioritize who we want to work with first, so we have 10 families that we're that we're focusing on and working with, so I will keep the board updated on that. And then the last piece of that is community engagement. We are working very closely with our Tri-City SOPA. There's a community resource fair on Saturday, March 9th at Culver Middle School. We'll have some state level representation there from our state legislature, and just it's a fair, it's a community resource fair for all of our students with families with students with IEPs. So finding out about, you know, if I need to have my student conserved, how do I go about that process? What about student services or student support at the college level? How do I access that? What is it called? What services do they provide? Things like that, and it's a really great event. Dr. Brady's going to be there. He's going to speak, and it's just it's a way to kind of connect families and provide resources and support.
Great, thank you so much.
Thank you, Does someone have a clicker? Excellence in world-class employees. And so I've been told I have 2 minutes, so this is going to be fast. First and foremost, hiring process. So it's, once we get there, yeah, that. There you go. So recruiting, hiring, onboarding, collective bargaining calendar, and training. So if we go ahead and glance at the one page, I'll go ahead and break it down easier. One of the goals that the Personnel Services Department, and Dr. Horvath does apologize for not being here today because we usually tackle this together. He's in litigation for us for a personnel issue. For the hiring process though, we were committed to being able to make the transition to the BEST program, and I want to thank the Personnel Services, Claudia, former Denora, and obviously Dr. Horvath for making that transition, working with technology and business services, and so that check, we have been able to get through that. The next is the training piece. That's where the Ed Services Department comes into play. One of the first things that you notice is we wanted to make a commitment a couple of years ago around National Board in our partnership with Stanford and bringing on a district level instructional coach. And we set a goal of 20%. We actually doubled. So we went from 6 staff members earning National Board certification last year under Dr. Michael Sherman's leadership and support to having 7, and they'll actually be represented and honored at February 13th. So we asked just for a 20% increase at strategic planning over the summer, and he turned around and doubled our numbers in the district. We went from 6 qualified certified teachers to 13 at this time. And he has been doing an excellent job of going out there and recruiting, doing lunch and learns with the teachers so that they have more information around what National Board Certification means. And I'm going to tell you too, just from a standpoint from him, he's supporting Melanie Bronder is one that earned it. So you have a visual arts teacher to a special education teacher to 2 math teachers to 2 science teachers. So he's really having to be able to support many different realms and content areas and being able to earn that the highest level of certification for a teacher in the nation. Keep going. 100% of our teachers, we hope, will pass through our California Teacher Induction Program. Again, under Dr. Michael Sherman, me, Dr. Breggy, and Dr. Horvath need to attend that graduation ceremony. It's where we pair a veteran teacher in the district with a brand new teacher clearing their teaching certificate. They have meetings. They'll have one actually today after school. It'll be up in ICB 1. Dr. Sherman sets the agendas for all those meetings, from classroom management, effective grading practices, brings in different speakers from technology to business to elementary ed. So we all go in there and be able to share our expertise with our new teachers. And 100% of our teachers did participate in our new teacher orientation, and those that got hired after the fact. Our department followed up with them from Human Resources, Business Services, and Ed Services, and Student Services to make sure that they had ongoing training. All the way down to retention, we have provided you guys with an update on our current negotiations. So this is a good goal. We are literally just waiting for the collective bargaining to move, and then we'll have to wait to move the training once we ensure that all of our new teachers do clear their credentials through the CTC, the California Teacher Credentialing Agency. But I believe that we're on track.
Nice.
Yep, thanks. 2 minutes and 32 seconds.
Whoa.
Very nice.
Okay, facilities department, go a bit.
Okay, I'm going to speak a little bit about our goals and where we are. On our 5-year deferred maintenance plan, we're just have begun our HVAC assessments with through our CalShape program. That's going to give me the final data that I need in order to complete the deferred maintenance plan and all the items that will be on that plan. That CalShape assessment goes through and does all of our air balancing. It's a full system assessment throughout the entire school district. And those are most major mechanical systems that we will be facing for replacement and major repairs in the future. So that should be done in the next several weeks. Probably within the 3 to 5 weeks, I'll have the reports for all that and be able to finish them for a maintenance plan. Our work order requests, that's another area that's in progress. Our goal is to always get things done as quickly as possible. There are some small things that we can do right on the spot when we get to the sites. There's other things that we can repair within 24 hours. And there's the systems and things that we can't fix within 24 hours. We create a schedule and we're communicating that to the sites. Our principal surveys went out, our first set of principal surveys went out. I should call them assistant principal surveys because there's a facility assistant principal that runs all of our communications with regard to things that need to be done on the site. So we sent our first set of surveys out, and we received our first set of feedback, which was overwhelmingly positive. We've had a grading system I created from A through F, just like a report card. We got mostly A's. We got 1 C, which was actually about communication. And that communication, there was a couple of requests that where sites just wanted to be more in the loop about where we were on more long-term projects, and that's an easy fix for us. So I'm hoping by the next time the surveys come out, we're always shooting for straight A's. And then with regard to our fit reports, with our site assessments that we do and our site inspections that we do with the custodial and the maintenance department, it's catching a lot more areas that would be found on fit reports. And so looking at, once we do a custodial assessment, they're actually looking at the entire site from the ceilings down to the carpets, and we get feedback from that, create work orders from that. And so it's a more proactive approach so that things that would find their way onto a fit report are often done prior to ever having a fit inspection done. So, and then secondary to that, when we do our annual fit assessments, we will go through and do a complete district inspection prior to that. So I expect us to be able to stay in that exemplary level. There are virtually no school districts that have exemplary levels, and that's at 99 to 100% percentile. We reached that last year, and that's going to be a hard goal to stay up with, but that's what the goal is, and that's what our intention is. So, and that's it for maintenance and operations.
Thank you.
Any questions about construction?
Raphael's being impatient, but I'll try to be quick. I'm going to stand so I can see. Just the update on our first goal here, the facilities master plan. As you probably saw originally on the agenda, on last board meeting's agenda, we had the agreement up there to be approved, but the architect had some requests for changes to the agreement, so you'll see that on the agenda for the next board meeting. And that's for the architect to assist us with the facilities master plan, and then we can proceed with updating that once that agreement is in place. El Rodeo, we developed our transition team. We've been meeting, I think, successfully. We took a little pause in December. We're back at it now at the start of the new year. Every other week we're meeting, and we're making progress. So that will remain in progress until we have our successful ribbon cutting in August. Right. Future projects at the high school. Our goal is to complete the planning and design, which we are doing. We presented our master schedule for all of our construction projects a few months ago at a board meeting study session. We're on track so far. We have our upper athletic field proposals in hand. We're reviewing those now. Our intent is to present those to you at the next board meeting for approval on who we select. We have the building C of the new Conheim. We'll be sending out that RFPQ in the next week or two, hopefully, to start gaining interest in that project and getting contractors on board for that. And that's it for that one. Yeah.
So, just to add also, with the opening of El Rodeo, that we'll present some information on the 13th. We really needed that first day of school as part of the calendar, which is part of the tentative agreement. That was a big launch for us for everything that falls into place, everything from tours to ribbon cutting ceremonies, and so we'll share that with you on the 13th.
Can I also add? Sorry, there was a El Rodeo goal on my paper that I forgot to go back to after I got so excited about the academics. So I just wanted to share that the Hawthorne staff had a tour. There's a very, very tiny picture that we'll share more about that. There's furniture in place. They got to see classrooms. We are working as like a joint committee about new behavior expectations. We're starting that. We thankfully worked with some really cool people from TBIS about how to get started and how to launch that, and then how to involve our entire community. And then there's also a committee about closing Hawthorne. It's going on with some former teachers and some people that are taking the lead in like how to say goodbye to a teaching space for a long time. So, thanks for letting me piggyback on you.
Oh, I just one last thing about the construction progress. We already met that goal. And I'll pass it on to Raphael.
Thank you, Will.
You're welcome.
I have two questions, and it's really, it's very specific, so this may not be the meeting for it. But it was brought up, and I know we talked about this when we talked about the soccer field and whether or not there was power that went out to where the field was for lights. And I know that there was power, right?
Well, we brought conduit out to the opposite side of the field.
Right, because we didn't have that before.
Right. So we added the conduit. Go ahead.
We added the conduit so we can have lights.
Yes.
But we don't have like nighttime lights.
Correct.
Over there. And
Correct.
so it's something that you want to explore from
So
utilizing it.
we explored it with BHUSD, and they have these portable units that they have in mind to bring out to the field. And that's why we ran the power, or the conduit for the power out there, for them to use that if they determine they want to have night games.
Right, I remember we talked about it when they came here for that
Right.
presentation.
But any permanent light structure is very expensive.
Yes.
Yes, and we don't have the real estate, especially on the Whittier side, to put large light poles in.
All right,
Certain ones are actually really good.
moving on to.
Are they good? They
Yeah.
get the job
Yeah,
done in a
really
good way?
We've used them at other schools.
KYSO is using them at BD right now. They have
Yeah.
portable steps that are working very well.
And they like it.
Yeah, they like it.
What
More
about the
lights in the-
fencing? Like, it's so great right now when you drive by because you can see
Mhm.
the fencing right now, and it's so nice because everybody that's driving by mentions it because they're so used to just seeing that construction fencing.
Totally.
But as we move forward, what will that fencing look like?
So I don't know when the last time you saw it, we do have a kind of perforated panel on the fencing now.
Mhm.
However, it may or may not provide enough privacy, so we've talked to Sarah about possibly adding the mesh over the.
Like BV?
Yes.
I really
like
loved
Hawthorne.
it. I loved the
It's
lease
transparent.
I really wish we could leave that.
It'd be more.
I know.
We
I
can for
know.
6 months.
I know.
Exactly,
So
do it
pretty.
now while you drive by because it'll be covered again.
Yeah.
I wondered about
It's too
that.
transparent.
It's too.
Yeah.
And there's gonna be
So-
construction right across.
Yeah.
Well, that regardless of
Yeah.
it's all.
How long is that
It's
gonna
gonna
take, that
be
thing
one.
across the street?
Many
Sorry.
years.
Couple years.
Because this one's driving me nuts.
No, that's not
I'm like, can they handle this already? I'm sitting in the short
It's going so
diverting
fast.
traffic.
There's a light at the end of the tunnel.
Hey, Raphael.
Sorry.
Okay.
All right, those are my two questions.
All right, so business services, fiscal services. So our manuals have been refined to make sure they are well defined. And so, as you can see, anyways, yeah. So we'll provide a final draft in our next in our February connection. So you'll have that. As far as the establishing industry standard procedures, so we've embraced putting the right procedures in place, and we have them. And so that's really good because everything is falling in line. And sorry, everything's falling in line with the right procedures for the business department. We've had to update a lot of things because of the changes in the board policy, so we've done that. But our procedures, our manuals are very well aligned. It says in progress because really it's not something that's ever going to be 1,000% complete because you're always updating, especially because our friends in the state decide to change their mind about things all the time. So then when they change their mind, we have to change our process sometimes, and so that's what happens. Financial reporting, we presented the first interim and we closed the books at our last financial reporting. The first interim report, we did it by the deadline. I think it was timely and accurate, and so that was really good. In regards to our audit report, we met with our auditor, we reviewed potential findings, but the result of that audit report was that all 3 audits were completed, and I'm really happy with the outcome of the audit. It was very positive, very clean, especially when it comes to the bond side of the audit, like how the feedback from Mr. Bichetti was, I think, just shows a lot of trust in the processes that we have in place, and I'm just really happy to hear that. One of the things that just kind of drives it home for me is just the change in the tenor. And I'm not talking about the saxophone. The change in the tenor of the people in the room. So, like for example, in the CBOC, sorry. For example, in the CBOC, there's a lot of positive feedback now, and it's night and day. When I got there, I was kind of scared actually. When I left the meetings, I was like, oh my God, what's going on? But now it's really actually a friendly thing. You have people making comments every now and then, but it is what it is. But we get a lot of positive feedback, and that has to do with positive movements in our audit. Same thing goes with our finance committee. When we first got on the finance committee, there was a lot of concerns too, and now the finance committee is real happy. And so I just feel like it's reflecting in our committees the progress that we're making and in our audit report. And finally, the best HCM implementation. As I said, so recently I went to the CASBO Southern Section, and we presented. It was a workshop that was done, various topics. One of the topics was HCM. We did so well in our implementation as a district with our HR team and our business team that they asked us to present at CASBO to all these districts that are going to go through their phase of how we were successful, of how we were able to navigate through those waters. And one of the things I mentioned with the HCM system is if you have to call something the best system, it's probably not the best system. It's like you're forcing a name to a system that perhaps isn't best. And in reality, it's not necessarily the best system, but we worked through it. We've been able to implement it, and everything's worked out fine. So we presented. There was a lot of good positive feedback, but it's been fully implemented. So now we're running with BEST. We actually stopped printing out paychecks, and actually now our employees can go into BEST and look at their W-2s if they want to now. So they can actually, if you haven't looked up your W-2, you can go in there and look it up. You can look at your paychecks, you can look at all that stuff that's now in HCM. So we've implemented that completely, and it's been very successful. So overall, I think we've had a successful year, but again, you'll see in progress because we continue to have to do audit reports, we continue to have to do financial reporting, and we continue to have to use HCM. But overall, we've made significant progress in all these areas. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I just want to say, Rafael, that from sitting in the finance committee meetings in CBOC, so much of that is also a feeling of transparency and really accountability. So I think in the past, the questions would get asked and they'd get kind of a very opaque type of an answer, where now, certainly, especially in the CBOC, I would say, when any of the members are coming with their questions on the general ledger and all the different questions, they're answered right then and there in a very clear way, and I think that's really given everybody this feeling of trust and understanding because it's just very transparent and understandable, and the same on the finance committee. So I would say that's really been a great accomplishment of you and your team, and with Vanderslar as well, certainly for CBOC. And the other thing I'd say is congratulations on being asked to present on that implementation, because if I recall, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, your staff was really hobbled during that time period, and you really did it with like one arm tied behind your back. So congratulations to you.
Thank you, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you so much. Food services.
I'm Heather Oyama, Director of Food Services. I'm just going to go through, everything's in progress. This food services is always in progress. Like, it's never where I want it to, like, it's never finished. Like, we keep on progressing. And my staff, they're amazing, and they come up with ideas, and I really appreciate them. So I just wanted to let you guys know that. We received some funding, some kitchen infrastructure and training funds. We also received a equipment grant as well. Recently, we're getting some new equipment for the high school serving line. Our current equipment is about 25 years old. It still works, but we got some funds, so we're gonna upgrade that and add like another station, because right now our third station it doesn't look the greatest, so we're gonna make it look a lot better. We were also through culinary staffing, we had a cook at the middle school, and we've had that cook now for about since last March. We were lucky to actually bring her on. I'm really excited about that. She's kind of transformed the food, and again, it goes along with the kids. The kids have been really well behaved. I want to put that out there. Compared to last year, it's amazing. And I also think it has to do with the food. Like, they're respecting us, they're respecting the staff, they're respecting the food, and it's a big difference. And the high school's doing great, so it's like they've always been doing well with the food, but the middle school's come a long way.
I have to give both principals in your department. I was just walking through there the other day, and I'm like, it's amazing. And even Ken's department, like how clean it is afterwards, how respectful they are. I was assuming I was gonna get trampled over a hot potato, but it wasn't. Like, I mean, it's significant shifts from last year into this year at both sites, both locations. Yeah, so thanks to you guys.
Great. Yeah, like honestly, the administration has been good. My staff has been good. Like, and we've been trying to produce more food, so there's less food like shortage. Yes. So they're like scared they're not going to get the baked potato. Like, we have enough. Yeah. And surprisingly, the kids like the baked potato. So we started the baked potato bar at the high school a few years ago. We rolled it out to the middle school. Not really the bar, but now we're doing like twice baked potatoes. That's one of our pictures in the corner here. They really like it. Surprisingly, kids like baked potatoes. I know, it's very surprising. And then we've also, well, they like any potatoes, mashed potatoes, everything. We've done some new recipes. We did a black bean enchilada because a lot of our kids choose to eat no meat, so we've kind of introduced some of those items, and they're eating it. Cereal's a big, like, they love cereal, so we tried a new recipe where we put cereal on our yogurt parfait, and it was a success at the middle school. We're going to try it at the high school tomorrow. Again, we're continuing, and when it comes to wellness committee, I think I'm going to probably do one more toward the middle of this school year, like twice a year, and then waste disposal, we have to work on that. And that's about it for food services.
Okay.
Well, you can go ahead, Rochelle.
What about the kosher food presentation? I know you don't make that, it comes in. If there's enough, then do you have a lot left over? Or
I've been working on those numbers, like finding out from my staff at each site, like how much did you have left over today, and based on parent orders, like some sites may over order and the kids don't take it, and I would know, okay, this site needs to be reduced by 1 tray, and each tray has 14 meals. So there's like maybe parents might order 280 meals, but not all those meals are being picked up because children are choosing a different item. So I take that into consideration, and it's been pretty successful. We don't have a lot left over, so it's evening out. And then whatever's left over, mostly somebody will take it.
Dustin.
I just want to thank you so much for the fresh approach that you've taken to things recently. And you can even see with the smoothies and the pre-packaging and the grab and go, it's actually beautiful, you know, what you're providing the kids, and it's very healthy, so thank you. And the only comment I have is I would encourage some communication with the families, because there's so much good stuff going on, and the kids have opportunity for such healthy meals at no cost to the families. It's really a blessing, it's such a gift.
Yeah.
So I think it would be a nice idea to just share this information a little bit, whether it's the smoothies, whether it's the parfaits. I see the prepackaged cut cucumbers, tahini, you know, I mean, that's stuff that I would choose any day of the week for myself. So I think it would be really nice for the families to hear about, you know, all your hard work and the offerings available to the kids. And you mentioned potentially pho when I came to
Yeah, I'm
a
working on
recent
that.
meeting. And so I just, you know, encourage your continued creativity. I think it would be a great thing to have that, you know, Fridays or whatever you think is right, but sounds good, and thank you for reinventing the wheel.
Thank you so much. I'll talk to Ms. Starkins about that. Maybe she can.
Writing or not right now. Marketing campaign
It's just so
for
beautiful,
services.
whether it's on the Instagram, I mean, I'll leave it to you guys. But there's been such a shift, and we as parents are so lucky to have these offerings.
And it really honestly goes back to my staff, really, they care, like they put their heart into their work, and they love the kids.
Yeah, and even to see that some of the kids are part of your staff.
Yeah, we have kids in the middle school
Yeah.
helping us out, we have high school kids in the kitchen, it's like, it's nice.
Thank you, keep it up.
Thank you.
There was someone that reached out to us that has like the composting program or.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
I don't know about them necessarily, but I know that when they was through the night.
Yes.
And I thought maybe through the wellness committee, the parents could help with that
Yeah,
or something,
that's-
but.
Yeah, that's a possibility. I'm a little overwhelmed with
There's that,
people wanting to
there's a
help
man
right
that's
now.
connected, right?
I know. I sent them to you.
There's that organization.
Any other
Anyways,
questions?
no.
Any other questions about food service?
You're not on wellness anymore?
No. Okay, moving on to food safety goal of excellence.
Hello, everyone.
Is it back on?
Happy afternoon.
Thank you, Mark.
All right, so I think I have another slide with check marks. There we go. So monthly security meetings, these are great. We're calibrating, communicating, generating ideas about how to respond to various tabletop activities, and we continued that again this month, so that is continuing, so that's in progress. You can see that we've had, the next two are met, but I just do want to emphasize that Emergency Operations Center, we're constantly working on that. We had a really great opportunity to utilize a mobile emergency operations center on that December 6th Hawthorne Horace Mann afternoon, if you recall. A really great opportunity to use our partnership with the city and also an emergency operations center with the district. It worked out really well. So that's always continuing. And then last, always working with our JPA partners. I did check in yesterday to make sure that my read that we are very, very consistently supporting them. Gates are open, guards are there. You know, compared to last year, it is remarkably effective. They had, I think one group had to wait 5 minutes to get a door open. Those are the kinds of concerns, right? So that's not a great one, but that happened once since we met last. So really high percentage, you can see here 99.2. 2 shifts where they weren't perfect. One of them the city didn't even know. We just got it done. And then the other one, like I said, 5 minutes. These are tiny things. I easily could have put 280 out of 280, but I want to keep it rigorous. So that's about it. You know, exciting times. Things are going really well.
Great, thank you.
Sure.
Okay, why recognition of excellence?
Yes, that's me. If you want to click, or Rebecca, go ahead.
You want to start?
Go ahead.
So I'm going to start by bragging about Dustin and Dr. Horvath, who isn't here yet. So round of applause. They were named by AXA, which is the Association of California School Administrators. Look at that, I got it all by myself. Region 14. For essentially being absolutely incredible. And you will notice that today we did a massive Instagram push on celebrating them and this incredible achievement, because it is not an easy task to become this incredible honor. I would also like to acknowledge the work that Dustin has done through the Pathways booklets. So if you guys haven't seen them already, these ones are floating around. We have a great new, I guess, perspective and vision that Dustin had, which was to say, how are we really highlighting the excellent work that we're doing within our schools with our pathways that start and are so well thought out from grade 6 all the way through to 12, right? So if you're in grade 6 choosing, okay, well, where does that take me? Where do I end up by the time I'm in grade 12? So the 12th grade. So I think that it's really important, if anyone's listening at home, to jump online, bhusd.org/pathways/ to just take a moment to recognize that this is an excellent tool for you to use. I would use the word tool in planning your time at BHUSD and how you want that to evolve as you grow into all of the different opportunities that we have to offer. Do you want to talk about AP honor roll?
Yeah, and thank you, Ms. Starkins, because that's Ms. Starkins too, and Ms. Austin, so Chrissy Austin too. Definitely would not have been able to put my words into a visual if it wasn't for them in that sense. Just AP honor roll. So that was one of the things that I wish Drew was here to just applaud him and his team and all the work that they've done utilizing the potential AP report to, again, access. We've increased our access to advanced placement at the high school level, in addition to our achievement. So meaning students that are scoring 3 or above on multiple assessments. So that is awesome. And again, from that report, from making this honor roll for the first time, we got more data on our students to be able to identify where can we then move it to the next level. So hopefully this time next year we'll be talking about gold status. And then last but not least, I want to also just one thing that isn't here, Raphael had mentioned just presenting at the CASBO conference. But Maggie, we just found out too, and she was going to say this, and Dr. Christine Kim, our AP at Hawthorne, will be actually presenting this Saturday. So through AXA, the Association of California School Administrators, they'll be co-presenting this Saturday at a conference in just west of us. So I thank you for both of them for representing us as a district. And it'll be exciting. I will be there in attendance too.
Okay, good job,
So
Maggie.
thank you for that. And that's it.
That's it.
All right.
Okay.
Wonderful job.
During our recent academic study session, we talked about the concept of a board policy requiring that the AP exam be the final exam for high school students, to require them to take it because it affects our numbers in terms of rankings. So
It wasn't a policy, it was a practice.
Or a practice.
And there was something about an AP contract on one of the updates.
yeah, so I'm only asking because we're always wondering how can we as a board support you in your endeavors for achievement and so on and so forth. So is that something that we should be circling back on, or is it unnecessary for us to do that, or what's your thought on that one?
I think at this time, by providing us with the opportunity and the means to be able to provide this opportunity for our students to have access to the APs, that was the decision that you guys made as a Board of Education to support us moving in that direction. I would say let's wait until we get through this school year to see the total number of students that complete. Like Mr. Stewart had just mentioned that you guys hosted your AP informational sessions with all the department chairs there are things that are happening in practice at the site level. I would like to be able to, for us to see the outcome of the total number of students that actually do fulfill that promise. Like I said, they are having all those conversations, they're going in and out of those classes.
So we'll go
Because
step by step.
yeah, and then, and we just wanna be very cautious of, per ed code, the grading practices inside the classroom are of the teacher's discretion. And so we can't necessarily force them to include that test in their grade, but it would be, I think, interesting organically to see the outcome of, now that we've been able to purchase for all students, what does that look like? How does that feel? Does it feel different? Does it look different? Are our numbers different? Did it impact it? And then I think that conversation in like June or July will be a much better conversation.
Okay,
And
let
Jenny,
us know.
something we talked about was the idea of an AP class as a graduation requirement, because that is something the board
Yes.
can have purview over.
Right.
But that's Dustin said, put a pin in that. Let's see how this rollout goes this year, and then bring that back.
Yeah.
Because even if we make the class a requirement, you still can't make the test a requirement.
Yeah, and part of that Avid's going to address part of that too, is that part of the Avid process is to ensure that every student in the program takes an AP, so we can also steal a little bit of that to see how that goes too, to help support that, Noah.
I mean, I was thinking even, you know, it could be a contract between the student and the district. You know, if you're gonna be a student in our AP exam, in an AP class, then our expectation is that you would take it. So that it's not that we're bypassing the teacher, it's that it's the teacher is besides the point, you know what I mean? It's between us and our consumer. But I'm okay with putting that on hold until you have more information, and, you know, we have a different culture now. And so let's see how this pans out this year.
But we also didn't want the cost of the AP test to ever be an impetus for someone not taking
Yeah.
it. So we did give approval, I believe.
Yes.
We had that.
Yes, I mean, that's what
That
he's
was a
talking
change we
about.
We
did
also
do.
don't wanna
Yes.
force the hand of people to take the AP test who will not do well or don't feel they're gonna do well, because often, not always, but often those who don't take it feel like they're gonna, you know, they're not gonna get a 4 or 5.
But
So,
there is a ranking for just
That's
taking.
what I mean,
It is.
exactly. So if we
Yes.
lose in
So
the
30%,
rankings.
That's only half of
30%
it.
of our US News and World
Exactly.
Report is part of that gaming system. And that's what Dr. Stewart has been working with the Ed Services too, on just like getting that communication out of the importance for parents in testing. And that'll be part of our communication around that AP is like, why is it important to go take a swing at it, right? You're never gonna know if you're gonna hit a home run if you never
you
run
never
up to the
tried.
plate.
Yeah.
And that's the point, is we need them to get up to the plate, because that's part of our score for US News and World Report, is we have 70 kids in the class enrolled and only 50 take the exam.
Exactly,
That's the-
and that's a resource that they've now taken, you know, in being a student in that class.
Correct.
And it does seem like most of our students do at least pass their APs, so it's almost a waste.
Totally, yeah. It's an encouragement piece. Sometimes the parents fall into the trap of the kids say, I don't feel prepared. There's a bit of test anxiety associated with that. But it's like, you're never gonna know until you get in there. And the worst thing you could do is not do well.
yeah.
It
You
also,
know?
as a baseline issue, it could save a family thousands of dollars. You know, I took AP statistics, I did not get a 5 in it, but ultimately I didn't have to take it at UCLA
Yeah,
because I
definitely.
did good enough, so, I probably saved like $6,000-7,000 as a result of that.
Yeah.
All right, I
And
know
then-
there's a long night tonight at the high school, I'm planning to go as well. Any further comments before we wrap it up? Okay, meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.